So hello and very good afternoon all of you. So please let me know whether I am audible and my voice is clear. Yeah, so I can see few people have already joined. So just let me know learners that my audio is clear and you are able to see the slide transitions on your screen. Fine. So after that we will be beginning our today's marathon session. Okay. So just give me 1 minute. I am just unable to figure out whether I am connected or not. So just give me 1 minute. Okay. Yes. So I think I am connected. So hi Navya, how are you? Good evening, good afternoon and welcome to the class. Hi Ram, good afternoon. Rupa, good afternoon. So I hope you all are prepared for next 2 hours and 15 minutes. Fine. So again, today's class will be different from the perspective that if we complete our today's class and tomorrow's class, then 50% of your ethics, integrity and aptitude syllabus of paper GS4 or around 40% will be covered. Fine. So that is the main point of this class, and we will be comprehensively looking into the complete summary of second ARC report on ethics in governance. So before we begin the class, fine, some of the few things first I'll tell you all the people who are new. So I welcome all of you to this class. Fine. Hi Rupa, how are you? Good afternoon and welcome to the class. Fine. So this is the second ARC report on ethics in governance, and today we are in the marathon class session 1. Fine. So now this is about your educator, that is me. I have cleared my UPSC Civil Services Mains in 2019 in my first attempt. Also I have cleared CAPF written in my first attempt, and I am a BTech degree holder from Computer Science and Engineering, BIT Sindri, Dhanbad, Jharkhand. Hi Srikant, how are you? Srikant, good afternoon and welcome to the class. Today you are in a marathon session. Fine. And we will be covering complete summary of second ARC report on ethics in governance, which is a very important component from your GS mains paper 4 perspective. And this is the Telegram channel. The people who are new, you can join this Telegram channel, that is Road to Civils. And on this Telegram channel I will be uploading the PDF of the summary of ethics in governance, and all other PDFs have been uploaded. And whatever courses I bring on Unacademy platform, you will be getting notified through this channel. Fine. And you can follow me on Unacademy. This is my profile, that is @Sumit1920. Fine. So, and this is an extra information, that is one more course I am taking on Unacademy UPSC Current Affairs YouTube channel. Fine. This is the channel name, and the course is Rajya Sabha TV, the big picture debate analysis. In this particular course we are discussing all the important topics which is important from both prelims and mains perspective. Okay, so you can join me for this course on Monday 7 PM. Okay. Hi Rekha, how are you? Good afternoon and welcome to the class, Rekha. So now I hope you all are ready, and the excitement level is very high, because today it will be going to be very fruitful and engaging session, which means that I need your concentration for the next 2.25 hours. Fine. So before we begin, these are some of the things which I try to make clear. That is, first, I need consistency from all of you. Okay, whoever are joining to this course, please be consistent. Don't try to go away for a few minutes or like that. Try to be here till the next 2 hours, or else you will be missing many of the interlinkages. Fine. And this is the third report. I have already covered crisis management and public order. So gradually I will be covering all relevant second ARC reports summary. Fine. Hi Sweta, good evening and good afternoon and welcome to the class. So Nishant is asking that how many series required to cover up this topic. Nishant, only today's class and tomorrow's class. Okay, we will be covering it up in 4.5 hours or 5 hours, because ethics in governance is a very huge topic, and even second ARC, many things are important from ethics in governance. Fine. Then I want to tell you that just going through the PDF would not suffice. Fine. If you attend the classes, you will be getting elaborate explanation on interlinkages of all the topics which we will be discussing. Then there will be interlinking and dynamic interaction in the class, and that also means that I will be asking questions to all of you. Fine. So I expect that you all are prepared to give me answers. Fine. Then whether you are a fresher or you are a veteran, it doesn't matter. Why? Because second ARC in governance is something which is required by all the aspirants. In fact, the entire of second ARC reports needs to be covered holistically by every aspirant of UPSC exam. Fine. Then regarding mode of language, I will be taking the class in English plus Hindi. Okay, it will be Hindi come English. Fine. So you can think of it to be in English. Fine. So that आप लोग में से जो लोग भी देख रहे हो मैक्सिमम लोगों को समझ में आए, और जहाँ पे भी समझने में प्रॉब्लम होगी आप लोग मुझे कमेंट सेक्शन में बोल सकते हो. आई विल री एक्सप्लेन दैट पॉइंट इन हिंदी एज वेल. ओके, एंड फाइनली दिस इज गोइंग टू बी अ पावर पैक्ड क्लास. फाइन. And full attention will be required for your better understanding. So this is the last disclaimer, and I request you to please take a notepad and a pen with you and a glass of water. And now we will be buckling up to cover this class. Hi Sudarshanan, how are you? Good afternoon and welcome to the class. I hope Sudarshanan you are having a notepad and a pen with you, and to all other people who have joined me, like Ram is there, Navya, Rupa, Srikant, Rekha, Nishant, Sweta, all of you please have a notepad and a pen with you, because there will be some things which I will be asking you to make a note of it. Fine, apart from whatever is there in my PDF. So this is going to be the plan of 4.5 hours class, including today and tomorrow. So this is the structure. First we will be discussing intro part, then ethical framework, followed by legal framework for fighting corruption. The fourth will be institutional framework. Fifth, social infrastructure. Sixth, systemic reforms. Seventh will be protecting the honest civil servants. Eighth will be international cooperation, and ninth will be relationship between the political executive and the permanent civil service. So this will be the course structure and flow. Fine. And let me tell you that these 4 topics, that is till institutional framework, these are very lengthy topics. Okay, so in today's class we will be discussing intro and ethical framework, because these are again very lengthy. So these will be forming the major chunk of our discussion. These 4, that is ethical framework, legal framework, institutional framework and introduction. Fine. So these will be the main portion. Now before we begin, now let me take you through the syllabus of our GS4 paper, because some of the aspirants, they told me to please sir relate it with syllabus as well, and tell us that how we need to read it as per our syllabus, because ethics again the sources are very scattered. So we need to know that which portion is to be read from where, and if we are covering second ARC report on ethics in governance, then what all dimensions of the syllabus will be covered. Fine. So I hope you are able to see the screen. Just give me 1 minute. Yes. So regarding this portion, that is ethics basic introduction, in this ethics in public life, economic life, fine, duties and rights, virtue ethics, these part will be covered in second ARC. Fine. Then apart from this, I'll just go to the comments after I discuss the syllabus very briefly. Okay. Then human values. Fine. The aspects of this particular syllabus, this particular part, that is human values, like role of ethical values in governance and society, democratic values, fundamental values, values and skills, significance of values in civil services. Fine. Then values in work life and professional ethics, these will be covered in your second ARC. Then let us come to the point number 3, that is aptitude and foundational values of civil service. Entire part of this particular dimension of the syllabus will be covered in our second ARC ethics in governance report. Fine, that is there. Then let us come to the next part, that I told you, that essential aptitude for civil servants, foundational values, neutrality, anonymity, civil services accountability, integrity, humility, adaptability, magnanimity, perseverance, all of these aspects will be dealt in second ARC report on ethics in governance, which we will be doing. Then this part you need to read from your textbook. It can either be chronicle or it can be Nataraj sir book, okay, or chronicle book. Fine. Then let us move ahead. What other aspects will be covered by our second ARC? Fine. So now regarding this values and ethics in public administration, unit number 7. So of this particular unit, entire unit will be covered in our second ARC report on ethics in governance. So all these, that is, the code of ethics, then information sharing, importance of vigilant citizens, flaws in RTI and recommendations for improvement, citizens charter, these I had already covered. So these will be covered in your second ARC report on ethics in governance. Fine. Then corruption, this will be dealt elaborately. Okay, corruption part. So the another aspect is probity in governance. This part of syllabus will also be taken care in your current class and tomorrow's class. So as you can see, almost around 45% of the syllabus will be covered when we discuss the second ARC report on ethics in governance. So this was the part and this was the linkage with syllabus. Fine. So for the remaining part, you can refer to the Chronicle book. Chronicle book has the part 1 theory concepts like the thinkers, and then the comparative ethics. Those you will be getting from the Chronicle book. So that's all. Now let us begin our class, and before that some more people have joined. I welcome you all. Seetal is there. Hi Seetal, good afternoon and welcome to the class. Hi Megha, good afternoon and welcome to the class. I hope you all have a notepad and a pen, as I have told all my earlier students. Fine, Megha and Seetal. So now let us begin. So first will be our codes and visuals. As I already told you that in ARC class we will be discussing codes also, and those codes you can use in your essay paper. Fine, and that will fetch you very good marks. So this is the cover page of ethics in governance. We have Mahatma Gandhi. He has said that you must be the change you wish to see in the world. Fine. So this means that before improving society, okay, we first need to improve as an individual. That is the main essence of this particular quote. If at all we need to bring a change in the world, first we need to start from ourselves. Fine. And today's class will be also a bit of philosophical, you can say that. Fine. Since we are discussing ethics, therefore we need to substantiate it with examples, and then there will be some philosophical aspects as well which will be dealt, and which we actually need to mention when we write an ethics answer and we expect a very good marks. So Mahatma Gandhi has said that as human beings, our greatness lies not so much in being able to remake the world, that is the myth of the atomic age, as in being able to remake ourselves. So this again says the same thing, that पहले हम लोग खुद को सुधार ले, पहले हम लोग खुद को improve कर ले. After that, let us begin improving the world, our society, our nation and our state. That is the main essence of this quote. You can use it in your mains and essay answers. Then the second quote has been given by the second ARC itself, which is very, very wonderful. It says that rivers do not drink their water themselves, nor do trees eat their fruit, nor do the clouds eat the grains raised by them. The wealth of the noble is used solely for the benefit of others. Fine. So this is again a quote which says us, to be empathetic, to be sympathetic, and also, to serve others, to serve our society. And this quote is actually one of the foundational quotes on which the values of a civil servant, be it the integrity, or be it in the service of others, so these quote or these foundational values of civil servants can be related to this particular quote. Fine. So now let us proceed. So now let us begin with the introduction part, and this will be a very lengthy part because almost entire summary of the second ARC, what is going to be dealt with and what sectional approach we will be following in order to deal with various segments, that will be broadly discussed in the introduction part. Fine. So first is how we define ethics. Okay. So ethics is a set of standards that society places on itself. Very, very important. Please remember this definition, because many times you get simply a definition to what is the difference between ethics and values and moral. So in that case you need to be very clear regarding the differences between them. So this is my first question of the day. Okay, ethics, I have given you the answer, that is, it is a set of standards that society places on itself and which helps guide behavior, choices and actions. These are the three keywords. Okay, our behavior, our choices and our actions are guided by the ethics which has been set up by our society. Now I want you to tell me, what do you mean by moral? Okay, I want you to tell me in the comment section what is the difference between ethics and moral. And since you have a notepad, I assume that in your notepad, please make a note: difference between ethics versus moral versus virtues. Okay, ethics, moral, virtue, and values. So that is a note which you are going to make. Fine. Now this is the answer which you are going to give me, that what do you mean by moral and how moral is different from ethics. So hi Ashish, how are you? Good afternoon and welcome to the class. अनिकेत वर्मा स्टिल, हिंदी में भी वीडियो बनाओ भाई, इंग्लिश वाले कोचिंग कर लेते हैं. ओके अनिकेत मैंने जैसा कि बताया कि जहाँ पे भी आप लोगों को प्रॉब्लम होगी मैं हिंदी में भी बताऊंगा, ठीक है. पर क्योंकि लाइक वी हैव ऑलरेडी सम कंपल्सन, सो ब्रॉडली मैं इसे इंग्लिश में ही रखूंगा. बट आई विल ट्राई टू simplify the concepts for you all guys and girls in Hindi as well. So Sheetal has told that it will not be in Hindi also. Yes Sheetal, I will try to explain certain points in Hindi also wherever possible. Okay, so Navya is telling that deciding what is right or wrong according to society is ethics. Yes Navya, that is correct, but I want to know what do you mean by moral and what is the difference. So Syed has given the answer that moral society's accepted principles individualistic. Okay, Ram says that ethics for individual, moral for group. Okay, Ram has given this answer. Fine. So let me look into some more answers. Then the standards do not by themselves ensure ethical behavior that requires a robust culture of integrity. तो यहाँ पे सेकेंड ARC ने ये बोला है कि हम लोग अगर बस एक स्टैंडर्ड सेट कर दें तो बस उससे काम नहीं चलेगा. इन ऑर्डर टू रियलाइज आवर एथिक्स देयर हैज़ टू बी अ कल्चर ऑफ इंटीग्रिटी. मतलब वो एक चाइल्ड में या फिर एक सोसाइटी में बहुत ही बिगिनिंग से उसको डेवलप और उसको नर्चर करना होगा. दैट इज द मेन एसेंस. फाइन. फॉर एग्जाम्पल इफ वी से दैट टेलिंग लाइज इज लाइक unethical. Fine. If we are taking the example, telling lies is unethical, but you just imagine that if in a child's house, if some person visits and if his father or his mother says that to the child कि अंकल को बोल दो कि पापा घर पे नहीं है, isn't it? Then that is actually what it is doing. It is the culture of integrity is not being maintained, or you will become familiar to the point कि झूठ बोलना is normal. Then you will not consider telling lie unethical when you grow up. So that is the main essence of this line, that is we also need to practice and we need to inculcate that particular value which we think to be ethical. Fine. I hope you got my point. Then the crux of ethical behavior does not lie in bold words and expressions enshrined as standards, but in their adoption in action. Fine. So since we have read acronym, that is action speaks louder than words, isn't it? So that is the point. Fine. We need to write over here that action speaks louder than word. So keeping that thing in mind, it has been said that we need to adopt it in action and we need to bring it in practice and not just let it be there in our textbooks or in our answer sheets of mains paper. Fine. And we need to sanction against their violation. For example, if anyone is doing unethical act, then it should be the responsibility of the society to sanction such behavior. For example, if there is a mob lynching, okay, this mob lynching is unethical for a civilized and decent society, isn't it? So as a responsible and ethical citizen, we need to condemn this act, isn't it? We need to sanction this act of mob lynching. That is the example. Fine. Then in putting in place competent disciplinary bodies to investigate allegations of violations and impose sanctions quickly, and in promoting a culture of integrity. So in order to address this part, that is to investigate allegations of violations and impose sanctions, we have a police system. Fine. And we had already discussed the public order, second ARC report on public order. Okay, so this is E, not Y. Fine. So we had discussed this public order report and we had seen that how police as an institution tries to maintain harmony and spirit of peace and prosperity in our society. So that part of ethics is being taken care by our institutional arrangement of police system in India. Then corruption is an important manifestation of the failure of ethics. The word corrupt is derived from the Latin word corruptus, meaning to break or destroy. So this is the comprehensive meaning of corruption which has been given by our second ARC. That is, it has been derived from the Greek word or the Latin word corruptus, which means to break or destroy. When a system, a norm that has been set up by the society, if that is broken, fine, if that is destroyed, then we can say that the society is becoming corrupt. Or an individual, if his moral values has been broken, then we can say that individual has involved himself in corruption. Fine. So now let us break the word ethics and deduce its meaning. Fine. So the word ethics is from the original Greek word ethikos, meaning arising from habit. Now when we try to link it with what we studied a few minutes back, we have seen that we need to promote a culture of integrity. So whenever we promote any culture is something that is inculcated over a period of time. It doesn't come all of a sudden. Fine. For example, if we are touching the feet of our elders, then that is the part of our culture. Now we think it is normal. Why? Because we have been practicing it from ancient times. But if a foreigner comes and if you tell him that he will think कि भाई ये क्या हो रहा है, उसको अजीब लगेगा, isn't it? क्योंकि उसके कल्चर में वो नहीं है. पर हमारे कल्चर में अगर किसी के फीट को टच करके आशीर्वाद लेना है तो that is our culture. We won't feel strange about it, but the foreigners will feel strange about that. So that is the meaning, that it arises from a habit. So that is termed as ethical if we go to take the blessings of our elders. So that is the concept and that is the interlinkage. But it is unfortunate that corruption has for many become a matter of habit. That is the problem. The people and society has become so much accustomed to involve themselves in corrupt practices that it has become a habit and it does not shake their conscience. That is the main point pondered by second ARC. Then it ranges from grand corruption involving persons in high places to retail corruption. So tell me the difference between grand corruption and retail corruption. This is the question number 2 of today. Fine. So you can again make a note in your notepad, grand corruption versus retail corruption, and tell me the difference between these two. Fine. Already there's a hint given that retail corruption is something which touches the everyday life of common people. So I want you to give me example and difference. Fine. So hi Kela, how are you? Good afternoon and welcome to the class. Lot of people have given the answer. Sweta has told that morals are those which are inculcated from an early age. Yes, that is okay. That is okay from your side, Sweta, but actually that doesn't brings out the difference. That is the problem. Okay, and the person who had told about individual and group, like Ram, that is correct. Okay, then Sudarsana has told that morals are right or wrong told from early age. Okay. Then just give me 1 minute. Just give me 1 minute. Then Nimesh has told that moral is an individual set of commitments. Nimesh says that ethics is a societal orientation. Hi Kela, welcome to the class. Yes, so Nimesh is correct, and moral is basically an individual concept. Fine, it is for individual level, but ethics is the societal concept. What society thinks is correct, that forms the ethics. What you think is correct is your own moral. Fine, is your own moral. That is the difference. Fine. Then anti-corruption interventions so far made are seen to be ineffectual and there is widespread public cynicism about them. Fine, that is the anti-corruption efforts which have been taken by government till date. Second ARC thinks that the perception of the people regarding those moves is not very effective, and people think that these arrangements are not sufficient enough to wane out corruption from our society. Then it is also said that corruption, it is so deeply entrenched in the system that most people regard corruption as inevitable and any effort to fight it as futile. Fine, so this is a very pressing problem of our society. हम लोगों को ये लगता है कि even like when tomorrow we will be bureaucrats, this is a high probability that a time will come when we will feel that we are all alone and we are not capable enough to fight this corruption because the entire system is corrupt. And we think that कि ये जो problem है corruption का जो disease है, ये इतने अंदर तक it has penetrated into the system and into the human morals and it has destroyed them that it is impossible to remove corruption. So tell me, how many of you think, like how many of you buy this argument? I just want to know in the comment section. Tell me how many of you think that the corruption has been so deeply entrenched in the system that it cannot be eroded, it cannot be removed? Tell me in the comment section. Then Navya has told that, okay, Ram has told grand corruption at high level central functioning, and Navya has told that grand corruption is corruption occurring at the highest level of government in a way that requires subversion of political system. Okay, Sheetal says that moral is personal and ethics is social. Yes, Sheetal, you are correct. Moral is personal, individual trait, while ethics is related to society. And whatever answer Navya and Ram has given, both of you are correct. But grand corruption can there be an angle different from government? Because both of you are integrating government. Ram says central functioning and Navya says highest level of government. But what about corporate fraud? Don't you think that the Nirav Modi case or the Mehul Choksi case or Vijay Mallya case, that is the that is a form of grand corruption? Tell me in the comment section. Then okay, Navya says that no, it cannot be removed, corruption cannot be removed. That is Navya's stance. So what other people think about corruption? And if you get a question, because there is a high probability, ethics में क्या होता है कि it is more of your personality, how you think. That is why paper preparation of GS4 is different from GS1, 2 and 3. Fine. 1, 2 and 3 में क्या होता है कि जो फैक्ट है, जो आपने पढ़ा है, वो आप रिप्रोड्यूस करोगे and you will be given marks. But this is not the case when we discuss GS4. Fine. GS4 में what happens is that you get such questions which tries to know what is your response, what is your thinking on particular issue, and on that you need to be very clear cut and you need to substantiate it with proper examples and your own logical argument. That is the main point. Fine. So that is why I am asking this question from all of you, that what do you think? Do you agree with this point? This point has been given by second ARC, but as a future bureaucrat who who is assumed to be optimistic and taking challenges and bring a change in our governance in our country, should we believe this thing, or if at all we believe, what are the remedies which we can provide as a future bureaucrat? That is my question to you all in the comment section. Please take 1 or 2 minutes time and give me an answer for this. Then now this is again very very important point, and I would like you to make a note of whatever thing I have put it in bold. That क्या है कि दो नजरिया है देखने का, ठीक है? There are two somewhat contrary approaches in dealing with corruption. Fine. एक जो तबके के लोग हैं, a section of people, they believe that कि if we over emphasis on values and character, then we can we will be able to tackle corruption. Fine. This is one set of belief, that if there is an over emphasis on values and characters, then that will lead to a corrupt free society. Why? Because people think that since there is a decline in values and the consequent rise in corruption, they think that these are cause and effect. This is the cause and this is the effect. So this is the first group of people and this is their belief. That is, अगर values decline नहीं होता तो corruption नहीं होता, और इसीलिए हम लोगों को emphasis करना चाहिए values inculcate करने में. और कहीं ना कहीं इस चीज को आप substantiate कर सकते हो with the introduction of GS paper 4 as a separate paper in our UPSC civil services exam. Okay, when in our CSE exam GS4 was included as a separate paper of 250 marks, which means that there is an attempt by government to inculcate values in the future bureaucrats, in the civil servants. Then the implicit assumption is that until values are restored, nothing much can be done to improve the conduct of human beings. So this is something which reinforces the point which has been uttered by a section of critics or a section of thinkers. Now let us look into what are the second approach when the thought regarding perception of corruption is concerned. Second approach is based on the belief that most human beings are fundamentally decent and socially conscious, but there is always a small proportion of people which cannot reconcile individual goals with the good of society. That is, इनके केस में क्या होता है कि ये जो इंडिविजुअल गोल है ये हायर प्रायोरिटी पे रहता है, और ये जो सोसाइटी का गुड है इसको ये लोग लोअर प्रेफरेंस पे देते हैं. वो ये सोचते हैं कि भाई भाड़ में जाए दुनिया और मेरा काम होना चाहिए, ठीक है, भाड़ में जाए जनता अपना काम बनता. दिस इज द हिंदी कोट, एंड दैट कोट कैन बी सब्सटेंशिएटेड व्हेन वी टॉक अबाउट दिस पर्टिकुलर approach. Fine. They give priority to themselves rather than to society, and people like these, they are never welcomed in civil services, or if such people become politicians, then our country will be sold off. That is the main point. Fine. Then second ARC says that such deviant people tend to pursue personal gain at the cost of public good, and the purpose of organized government is to punish such deviant behavior. So this is the another opinion of second ARC in terms of this second category of people. For the first category, it says that you please inculcate values in them. If values are properly inculcated, then there is a high probability that corruption will be eroded. But the second thought says that overall people are good, people are people have values, but there will always be some people who are valueless, who will benefit, who will take benefit for their own individual self rather than for society. So such people should be penalized and such people should be punished. So these are two views, and regarding the second view, this is the recommendation of second ARC. And for the first view, I discussed that GS paper 4 has been introduced. Then the class of moral science or cultural instructions, these are taught to the students in class 10th, class 9th, and many of you, I think you would have read these things. So this is in order to realize the goal of thought 1. So tell me in the comment section now that which school of thought you subscribe, whether the first thought you subscribe or this is the second thought which you subscribe. Fine. So why I am asking such questions is that because this is my intention that at the end of this class you should be more clear. That is, I want you to do an introspection so that you can be more clear regarding what are your own views regarding some sensitive topics when it comes to ethics, because unless we know that, we won't be able to get a very good marks in GS4. And in case we are deviating from our the main thought process, then we need to course correct ourselves. That is the point. So tell me what approach you subscribe to in the comment section. Let us move ahead. It says that if good behavior is consistently rewarded and bad behavior is consistently punished, the bulk of people follow the straight and narrow path. तो यहाँ पे रिवॉर्ड और पनिशमेंट से मतलब है, ठीक है. दिस इज बीइंग टॉक्ड दैट देयर शुड बी अ कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ रिवॉर्ड वर्सेस पनिशमेंट. ओके, सो व्हाट डू यू थिंक, इज दिस अप्रोच गुड? लाइक इज दिस जस्टिफाइड? शुड दिस बी द नॉर्म ऑफ द सोसाइटी? फॉर एग्जाम्पल, if there is a student, let's take the example, and if he is always attentive in class, if he is coming to school all days, he is not bunking the class, he is obeying his teachers, then he should be given a very good marks, or he should be given a good reward in his behavior performance. But the other student who is not adhering to these things, he should be given a less marks so that he can improve. So do you think that this black and white distinction in society, is this feasible, and will this give us a benefit in long run? That is my question. But again, there is a clause for that. The clause is that if good behavior is not only rewarded but is actually fraught with difficulties, and bad behavior is not only punished but is often extravagantly rewarded, then the bulk of the people tend to stray from the honorable path. So this is a very, very sensitive issue. This tells that for example, मान लीजिए I become an IAS officer or you become an IPS or IAS officer tomorrow, then in the field or in your in your office, you are very honest, you are very sincere, but you have to pay the price of that honesty by getting frequent transfers, okay, or by getting a sent posting, while there is another fellow who is corrupt, who is highly corrupt, who is immoral, who is unethical, and he is your colleague, but he is always getting a very prominent posting, and he is very rich, and he has the support of politicians and other corrupt people and his subordinate staffs. Then in that case, the honest civil servant, he often thinks that what is the benefit of being honest, because ek to main I am doing a good job, I am honest to my job, I am treating my people well, but I am getting a bad sent posting. That is the reward which is being given to me. And then the person who is dishonest, he is getting good rewards, he is getting encouragement, he is getting more entitlements. So then that acts as a discouraging and demotivating factor, and this is one of the major problem that has been pointed out by second ARC, which is again a root cause of corruption getting broadened day by day, because corrupt behavior is not being punished. This is the first problem. Second problem is that rather they are being rewarded. So this is the main problem. Fine. Now in the real world, both values and institutions matter. ठीक है, हमारे पास वैल्यूज तो होने ही चाहिए. उन वैल्यूज को इम्प्लीमेंट करवाने के लिए और उन वैल्यूज को रिवॉर्ड या पनिश करने के लिए देयर हैज टू बी इंस्टीट्यूशंस, एंड दैट इज व्हाई वी हैव द इंस्टीट्यूशंस लाइक जुडिशियरी, we have the institutions like parliament, fine, we have the institutions like police, fine, though there's a different thing that right now all the institutions are under controversy and debate, but the actual intent behind creation of these institutions were to reinforce the values which a society has put upon themselves, fine. Then values are needed to serve as guiding stars and they exist in abundance in our society, isn't it? सब लोग बोलते हैं कि भाई चोरी नहीं करना चाहिए, किसी को गरीबों की मदद करनी चाहिए, या फिर घूस नहीं लेना चाहिए. all of us know this, but there are very few people who actually put it in practice, and that is the entire ethics about that. There has to be no gap between what we preach, what we believe, and what we practice. I hope I have made myself clear. Then this is the thing which I have put in bold, and I want you to please make a note of it. A sense of right and wrong is intrinsic to our culture and civilization, isn't it? एक आप लोगों में से आप में से हर एक आप लोगों ने, इनफैक्ट मी, all of us would have experienced this thing, isn't it? Right from childhood, our parents, they guide us, isn't it, that this is wrong, this is right. If you steal something, for example, if you in the childhood, if you stolen a pencil of your friend, then that is told as wrong. In our tiffin, if we snatch tiffin of someone, then that is wrong. If we tell a lie to teacher, that is wrong. If we humiliate our friends, if we fight with our friends, that is wrong. So what is wrong and what is right, that is taught to a student, that is taught to a child right from the day he is born on this planet, and that is told that it is intrinsic to our culture and to our civilization. And this is something which defines, which differentiates a human being from an animal. That is, we are civilized, they are not civilized. That is the only difference. And right now this civilizational aspect of our values is in crisis, and we need to regenerate those values, whether we have a responsibility towards environment, whether we have a responsibility towards animals. Like few days back in news we had seen that elephant case in Kerala, isn't it? In Kerala, the elephant, she died, she was pregnant. So again, then there was a lot of debate, heated debate, that what is the difference between a man and an animal, when men are losing, they are merciless towards animals. Similarly, we are not taking care of our environment, fine, then we are not taking care of the poor people, for example the migrant workers in the corona crisis, or we are taking law and order in our own hands, for example the riots, the mob violence, the mob lynching. So these phenomena which our country, our state, our society is going through right now, that poses a stark challenge to all these civilizational aspect of being human, fine. So the values and whatever examples I have taken in front of you, I've told you these examples are not in this slide, therefore I request you to make a note of those examples in your notepad, fine. Then the values need to be sustained by institutions to be durable and to serve as an example to others, and values without institutional support will soon be weakened and dissipated, isn't it? If there is no institution to to reinforce that, for example, if crime is unethical for a society, but if the criminal is not punished by the judiciary, then do you think that there will be a fear element in criminal? No, people will think that committing crime is normal, they won't be afraid. That is why we need strong and independent institutions which can punish a defiant behavior, so that there is a tangible amount of fear in the society. I hope I am clear, fine. So let us move ahead and I'll read some comments. Okay, so comments, just give me 1 minute. There are a lot of comments already that have come. I did not read them, so just give me 2 minutes, I'll read them. So Navya has told that it can be removed. I said, sir, okay. Navya says that corruption can definitely be removed, so that is a very optimistic point, and that is good. Then even Sudarsanan says that corruption can be removed. Sweta says corruption can be removed through very stringent punishments. Okay. Syed says that definitely corruption has its deep rooted in society, but it can be removed gradually by changing attitude of society. Yes. So almost all of you have that that bent of mind which is required to become a civil servant. So congratulations to all of you. Ram says corruption can be removed and it is not inevitable while we perform a vertical cross check at all levels of institutions. So Ram tries to tell that if proper checks and balances is maintained, corruption can be controlled. Sheetal says that if I do not make corruption, then there is a start and I can control people around me and under me. Very good, Sheetal. That is a very good point. Megha says that agreed, corruption has entrenched in the system, but it can be removed if each and every individual try to follow ethical values and morals at individual level. Yes, Megha, that is a very genuine point, and the point of both Sheetal and Megha are in similar directions, and it is a very good point. Navya says to minimize corruption, example is e-governance. Yes, Navya, even second ARC has talked about it and we will discuss it later in the slide. Then Navya also says that educators play a very important role in creating awareness about the detrimental effects of corruption in India. Yes, that is very, very correct. And that is the reason why, in our school-based curriculum, moral science as a subject has been introduced and values are introduced. Then Ram has seconded the point of Navya. Sweta says that inculcating values and morals so that corruption can be reduced and eliminated permanently. Okay, Sheetal has told seconded. Fine. So then, so there's okay. So okay, fine. So this second number, I feel that you all are. When I had asked the question that which school of thought you subscribe to, so the people like Sheetal and Ram has told that they believe in this second aspect, that is there has to be some reward and punishment mechanism in order to tame the corruption. So yes, that is fine. Then even Sudarshanan goes with the second school of thought, and each and every situation has some reason, has been told by Sheetal, just like Tukaram Munde. Okay, fine. Then it's balance of both thoughts. First school will inculcate values for progressive society and the second school will provide resistance for evil forces. That is a very good answer, Sayyid. That is a very good attempt. And actually we need to integrate both the second approach as well as first approach. They cannot be treated in silos. That is the main point. So many officers resign is told by Navya because of corruption. Yes, that is correct. Then Ram also says that without the second thought, first thought cannot be induced. Yes, Ram, that is absolutely correct. And Sweta says, can schools come under institutions? Yes, Sweta, schools can very well come under institutions, but that will come in first category. Fine, that is to emphasize on values and characters. That means that in order to enforce this first criteria as well as to enforce this second criteria, we have institutions for both of them. In case of first, we have schools, colleges, parents, families and societies. Please note, schools, colleges, parents, families and societies are the institutions related to first school of thought. Similarly, judiciary, parliament, police are some of the institutions which are related to this second school of thought. Okay, for example, you see when Nirbhaya case happened, then parliament was the institution which enacted a law, or in order to protect women in our society, parliament has enacted sexual harassment at workplace as a law. Similarly, domestic violence act as a law. Okay, then prevention of human trafficking or child labor law has been enacted by parliament. So parliament is the institution to enforce this second school of thought. I hope I am clear. Fine. Then Sheetal has termed a word that is sanskar. Yes, exactly, that sanskar needs to be there in every individual. Then Srihari S. Pillai says that, but the real issue behind the Kerala elephant death is related to the increasing man-animal conflict across our country. Yes, Srihari, you are correct, but like we need to relate it with our discussion over here that even when man-animal conflicts come, that is coming why? Because we can see that there are very less places which is which is remaining for animals. If we are encroaching upon the actual inhabitation of animals, where will they go, isn't it? So is it ethical from our part to encroach upon their habitation, isn't it? For example, if someone encroaches on my house, will that be ethical? That won't be ethical, isn't it? So from that angle we need to relate. Fine. Then Sheetal says that there is question, elephant is also animal, also hen, goat, etc. also animals. We regret elephant but eat hen, goat eagerly. Yes, Sheetal, that is also very, very correct. Actually, this type of thought we need to bring for all category of animals. We need to bring a harmony and balance between both man and animal and our environment at large. Then Srihari says, it is essential to curb out the problems like habitat destruction to tackle down such man-animal conflict. Yes, Srihari, that is a perfect answer, and actually the same thing I also told few minutes back, that is we need to restore their habitation. So now let us move ahead, and after few minutes I will again read the comments. Fine. So now let us move ahead. Now, so we were here. Now public office and control over public purse offers enormous temptation and opportunity to promote private gain at public cost. Isn't it very, very important? For example, if we are holding a powerful post, isn't it, that is a public post. Now, since we have tremendous power, then with power comes responsibility. But with power, there is also a danger of misuse of our authority. That is, we can use our post in order to achieve private gains. That is being told by this particular line. For example, if I am a collector, then in contract awarding, I can be biased, okay, to some set of people, to some private agencies. That is the example. Then, therefore, creation of institutions and designing of incentives are of utmost importance in promoting ethical conduct of public servants. So later in our class, we will see that what institutions or what laws or what legislation are in place in order to ensure that the civil servants' conducts are ethical. Fine. Then now again, this point is very, very important, which says that the corruption and abuse of office has been aggravated. Aggravated means to worsen, okay, to make more worse is the meaning of the word aggravated, by 3 factors. तो ये जो 3 फैक्टर्स है, इन तीनों फैक्टर्स का बहुत बड़ा हाथ है चीजों को और बद से बदतर बनाने में, इन टर्म्स ऑफ करप्शन एंड अब्यूज ऑफ पावर, अब्यूज ऑफ ऑफिस. सो द फर्स्ट इज दैट देयर इज अ colonial legacy of unchallenged authority and propensity to exercise power arbitrarily, isn't it? Right from the time of Britishers, this has been the problem. That is, there is no challenge or no questioning of authority. Whenever there will be no questioning of authority, when the people will be silenced, then there will be corruption. Similarly, the second thing is that whatever power has been given, if there is no checks and balances, then that power will be misused, abused and exercised arbitrarily. That is, on the authorities' whims and fancies and without following proper law and due process. That is the main point. Fine. And then in a society which worships power, it is easy for public officials to deviate from ethical conduct, isn't it? Since we read that jiski lathi uski bhais, isn't it? This is the quote which we tell in Hindi. So this again leads to corruption. The people who are in power, they think that they can do anything and everything, and since they will not be questioned, they will not be challenged by our society, so they have a license to do what they think is correct. Whether that is ethical or not, whether that is moral or not, that is not looked into. Fine. Then the second factor is that there is enormous asymmetry of power in our society. When we talk about this power, it is the a very problematic thing that only 10% of the individuals in our society, they have enormous power. For example, the politicians or the goons or the criminals, isn't it? They have the power, and when these criminals, they collude with politics, that leads to politicization of crime, which again leads to criminalization of politics. So this has created an entire mess in which corruption and abuse of office is rampantly misused and rampantly promoted. Fine. And 90% of our people, they are in the unorganized sector, which means that they are very they are economically not well off and they don't have power. Fine. Then nearly 70% of the organized workers with job security and regular monthly wage are employed by the state directly or through public sector undertakings. So this was the scenario in 2006 when second ARC had given its report. But now we have seen that recently now the government is believing in maximum governance and minimum government. Apart from it, there is a effort to rationalize the PSUs as well, and now the contract level of appointments are being taking place in government. So this problem is being addressed, but again we need to ask a question whether that contract level of appointment is justified or not. So I ask you this question, please tell me in the comment section, do you think that the current practice of government, that is contract level of appointments, is it justified, or we need to have more transparency in that process, that is contractual employment in government agencies? This is my question, please tell me in the comment section. Fine. Then almost all these employees are educated in a largely illiterate and semi-illiterate society, and economically even the lowliest of public servants are better off than most of people in the country. So this again says that only a chunk of people, they are educated, and since they are educated, they can easily manipulate government schemes, or they can easily manipulate the illiterate or ignorant people, and this can lead to corruption. Fine. Then what is more, their employment in government comes with all the trappings of power. Fine. That is, not only are they employed, they are receiving salary, but also they are wielding power. Fine. So at one hand they are economically well off, at other hand they are wielding power, and that leads to abuse of the office and corruption. Fine. So that asymmetry of power reduces societal pressure to conform to ethical behavior and makes it easy to indulge in corruption. That is, we say that कौन मेरा क्या कर लेगा, isn't it? I do not fear anyone, isn't it? Because I am all powerful and I have lots of money. I will be easily able to handle any problem if I face. Let me do corruption. That is the point. Fine. So now what is the third factor? The third factor is that as a conscious choice, the Indian state in the early decades after independence chose a set of policies whose unintended consequence was to put the citizen at the mercy of the state. So this is a very contradictory statement, and this comes from the government itself, that is second ARC, which was constituted by the government. Fine. So you can imagine, if second ARC is telling such a word, then definitely this is a very, very serious and important statement. It says that just after independence the policies were designed, but though it can be unintentional, our forefathers, they did not design such policies intentionally, but unfortunately those policies are one of the main reasons why today the citizens, they are at the mercy of the state. The citizens have not been empowered the way they should have actually been. That is the essence. Fine. Then what are they? Some of them are, like example is over regulation, severe restrictions on economic activity, then excessive state control, near monopoly of the government in many sectors, and an economy of scarcity, all created conditions conducive to unbridled corruption. So now let us link this with our current issues. We have seen in newspaper that APMC Act and Essential Commodities Act, okay, ECA, these have been abolished through an ordinance by the government of India, isn't it? These two acts, that is APMC and ECA, and this can again be linked over here. Fine. Because these APMC and ECA, this ECA was enacted when India was going through food scarcity. Therefore hoarding and black marketing was punishable offense under Essential Commodities Act. But at the other end, this ECA and EPMC, these left the farmers at the mercy of the middlemen, and the farmers were exploited. Fine. So this has been now abolished. So similar reforms we need to take now in order to end the monopoly of the government. We have the government has led to disinvestment or privatizing of the non-profit making PSUs. So that is another example. Similarly, in order to lift restrictions from economic activities, the license and the permit raj has been abolished during the 1991 LPG reforms, isn't it? This 1991 LPG reform, it brought an end to the license and permit raj. Fine. So this is again an example. Fine. So these are the gradual reforms which is being taking place in country, and we need to go miles before we can realize a corrupt free or a corrupt less, a very less corruption prone society. Fine. Then it is generally recognized that monopoly and discretion increases the propensity to corruption. Why? Because if you have monopoly, you know that people घूम फिर के आपके ही पास आएंगे, isn't it? They don't have choice. Since if there will be only single service provider, for example, आप ये imagine करो कि आज जियो अगर अकेले एक सर्विस प्रोवाइडर हो जाता है, with no offense, it can be anything, Jio, Airtel, anyone, fine. If there will be only one service provider, then obviously you will be at the mercy of these telecom companies, isn't it? Because you don't have another choice to switch. So that is the reason. That is why we need to understand that अगर आपको ऑब्जर्वेंट रहना है, अगर किसी भी फील्ड में अगर आपको ये लग रहा है कि देयर इज अ टेंडेंसी ऑफ मोनोपोली, बी इट द टेलीकॉम सेक्टर और बी इट द ऑनलाइन मार्केटिंग सेक्टर, then definitely as a citizen we need to protest, because ultimately it is not good for a healthy democracy. Fine. Then while competition and transparency reduce corruption, fine, isn't it? If there will be competition, if there will be more players in the market, then this will empower a citizen, As a consumer, as a customer, my bargaining power will increase, and also it will lead to more transparency. This will automatically lead to less corruption. That is the point. Then this has been dramatically witnessed in India in the wake of economic liberalization of 1991, which I already discussed. Then wherever technology and transparency have been introduced, so some of you had mentioned about e-governance. Okay, e-governance initiatives. So the e-governance initiatives are a technology based intervention to bring in more transparency and accountability and end corruption. Fine. Then other things like computerization and access to information have made many services from railway reservations to issuing of driving license increasingly free from corruption. If the processes are automated without any intervention of authority, then definitely there will be reducing corruption. That is the main point. Fine. So let us move to the next slide. Then a factor which increases corruption is over centralization. So apart from other factors which we discussed in our previous slide, that is in this slide we discussed about monopoly of the government, restrictions on economic activity, excessive state control. Apart from this, the another factor is over centralization. अगर एक टॉप डाउन हायरार्की बनेगा और सारा का सारा पावर फंक्शंस अगर सेंट्रल बॉडी पे, सेंट्रल नोडल एजेंसी पे हम कंसंट्रेट कर देंगे, डेफिनेटली दैट विल लीड टू corruption. Why? Because the authority at the top, he will be all pervading, he will be all powerful, and there is high probability that he will indulge into corruption. Fine. So in order to tackle that, what we had, this is the interlinkage. That is, Government of India introduced the 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment Act. So in the comment section, tell me, this is an easy question, I know, but what are these related to? And 73rd deals with what, 74th deals with what? And let me tell you one thing, this 73rd and 74th Amendment Act, before it was finally brought into practice, it was the effort to bring these was futile multiple times. The government of India tried for at least 15 to 20 years in order to bring this progressive change. So we can understand that अगर हमें कुछ ऐसा मूव लेना है which can erode corruption, that is a very mammoth task. उसको करने में काफ़ी प्रॉब्लम्स आती हैं, ठीक है ना, काफ़ी चैलेंजेस आते हैं. तो दिस वी कैन राइट इन आवर ethics answer as well, that yes, it is possible to win corruption, but it takes much effort. For example, the 73rd and 74th CAA was finally introduced after much effort of 15 to 20 years. Fine, that is the interlinkage. Then it is well recognized that every democracy requires the empowerment of citizens in order to hold those authority to account, isn't it? And how this is done? If we link it, we can link it with the features like universal adult franchise. Since every adult of India, he or she has the right to vote, so this right to vote is a form of arrangement which empowers the individual citizens of India, fine, to decide who should be able to govern the country. Similarly, if we are able to educate our people, okay, if we are able to educate masses, then this will again empower us and this will again reduce corruption. Why? Because if people are educated, they will be better able to question the government, isn't it? And in order to question government, we need a critical thinking. That is, we need a cognition. We need to analyze the scheme of the government, that how far the government's claim is matching with the actual ground level work, and based on that work only we will be voting in the next general elections. If we are able to do this, we can say that India is moving towards the cognition based voting, and this is very, very important in order to bring in more transparency and erode or erase corruption from our political system and society. Fine, just give me 1 minute, and after this page I will definitely read comments. Lot of comments are coming. Fine. So apart from the 73rd and 74th CAA, I explained you, another important landmark event was enactment of Right to Information Act. Fine. So first let us read about this, then I will tell you that again this Right to Information Act was brought after much effort, much movement, and even after that, right now we know that this right to information is not that much powerful, isn't it? So RTI, then effective citizens charter. If you remember, we had discussed about citizens charter in our earlier class also, but still, since many people are new, I will tell you that this citizens charter means a set of services which a citizen is entitled to get from a particular government agency, that will be enlisted and posted in front of the office, then that is known as citizens charter. Fine. Then opportunity and incentives to promote proactive approach of citizens, stakeholders' involvement in delivery of public service, public consultation and decision making, and social auditing are some of the instruments of accountability that dramatically curbed corruption and promoted integrity and quality of decision making. So this is again a very important point, and in this point almost whatever things are mentioned, they are important. Why? Because more or less we need to write these in our answers, because these are the initiatives. For example, the social auditing, in which what happens ki if there is some scheme of government which is for the benefit of the people, then let the people actually judge whether they have been actually benefited from that government scheme or not. That is the intention of this social audit. Fine. Therefore, the enforcement of rule of law and deterrent punishment against corruption are critical to build an ethically sound society. So even second ARC believes that a certain quantum of punishment and deterrence is a must in order to contain corruption and build an ethical society. So now let me read some comments. So just give me 1 minute. Okay, so Sheetal says that we should think like Geo or Gino. Yes, Sheetal, that is very correct. We need that thought only in our society right now. Then Srihari says that there must be a parity between authority and responsibility. Increasing authority means increase in our responsibility too. Yes, Srihari, that is correct. And also, in order to look into the fact that whether the responsibility is being adhered to, we need appropriate accountability. We need checks and balances. Then Srihari says that appointment of government services should be made through a transparent manner. And what is that manner? Can you tell me, Srihari, or any other people watching? Srihari has given a very good argument. He or she says that appointment of government services, appointment should be made through a transparent manner. How to do that? This is my question. If any one of you can tell me the answer, that will be very good. Tell me how we can ensure there will be a transparency in appointments in government posts or services. Sweta says, contractual jobs are temporary in nature but without any privileges such as health services or any other perks. Yes, Sweta, that is very correct. And that is the main counter argument against the contract based employment. Why? Because there is no job security, there is no social security, and at the whims and fancies of the government, employee is left, and that is actually anti-labor, anti-worker. Then Navya says that more transparency should be there. Okay, Sheetal says yes, it is good contract basis job because they are not liable, we can remove them. Okay, Sheetal, here you are addressing only one part of problem. From the employer's perspective, it is very good. But what about the employee's angle? You have to look into that angle as well. Fine, then only you will be able to write a very good ethics answer. And in this manner, in this, Sweta has given a good answer. So Sweta's answer can be clubbed with Sheetal's answer. Fine, then Ram says that contractual employment needs more transparency than what is it now because of some recommendations by political leaders. Simply reduction of political influence and bribery should be avoided. Yes, Ram, you are correct, and you have actually summed up the entire essence. That is very good. Sudarsanan says that appointment of government services are intransparent but more transparency is wanted. Okay, all of you are telling transparency. Appointments में होना चाहिए transparency. But my question is how? कैसे लाएंगे हम लोग ट्रांसपेरेंसी? दैट इज माय क्वेश्चन. देन नव्या सेज दैट सर नाउ फार्मर्स कैन डायरेक्टली अपहोल्ड टू अपाची मार्केट, राइट सर? यस, you are right, Navya. The farmers can directly contact to the markets, and even farmers will have more bargaining power. They can sell their produce anywhere. They are not restricted to their only tehsils. Fine. So okay, APMC, fine. Apache was a mistake. APMC. Syed says that contractual jobs will leave employee in a vulnerable situation. Rather, we need to strengthen the internal mechanism to bring any unethical practices and speedy clearance of cases. Yes, Syed, that is a very good answer, and that is a balanced answer. Very good. Navya has given the answer 73rd as Panchayat, 74th as municipality. Sweta has told rural and urban local bodies. Fine. Ram has told panchayats and municipalities. Syed is always giving very good comments. I have become fan of Syed. Syed, very good. He says that by internal mechanism one can create job security, that is faith, honesty and loyalty of employees towards the institution. Okay, and at same time punishment for any offences which are against organizational ethics. Yes, that is very correct, Syed. So Syed is giving solutions as well. That is very good. Rupa says that panchayats and municipalities 73rd and 74th. Okay, Sudarsanan has given the answer. Then Bindas Rock has given. Okay, Bindas Rock says that good afternoon sir, I am late. Okay, Bindas Rock, no problem. Good afternoon and welcome to the class. but still we have 1 hour and 10 minutes class left, bindas, so no problem, you can still be there and you will get lot of new learnings. Then Megha says that 73rd CAA granted constitutional status to and protections to Panchayati Raj and 74 to municipalities. Yes Megha, that is correct. Deepsika says sir आज का lecture का notification ही नहीं आया मुझे sir. Okay, no problem Deepsika, but since I think you are on our Telegram channel Road to Civils, and I without fail I post all my video links in that channel, so I hope you got it from there. Then Sweta says appointments should be made public in their concerning websites through digitalization. Okay, correct. And concerned ministry websites, fine. So again, what my question was there, it is still not answered. I am asking to all of you, just apply your mind, try to figure out that how we will be able to ensure transparency in appointments to government bodies or government services and posts. How to bring that transparency, that is my question. Give one example, simple, fine. So let me see now who is giving me the answer. So now I will move ahead. Then perhaps the most important determinant of the integrity of a society or the prevalence of corruption is the quality of politics, isn't it? Very, very important. Quality of politics. What sort of politics is being played in a country? That will be the determinant of integrity of a society. If politics is for getting votes, is for getting votes on caste basis or communal lines, or on politics of doles, I think you know what does doles mean, or populist schemes. अगर इसके बेसिस पे पॉलिटिक्स होता है और पॉलिटिक्स डेवलपमेंट के बेसिस पे नहीं होता है, then definitely that society will not able to progress and ethics and integrity in that society will be compromised. Fine. Similarly, if honesty is incompatible with survival in politics and if public life attracts undesirable and corrupt elements seeking private gain, then abuse of authority and corruption becomes the norm, isn't it? Obvious बात है कि अगर जितने भी पॉलिटिशियंस हैं अगर वो अपने प्राइवेट गेन के लिए काम करेंगे और उनको किसी भी तरीके का अकाउंटेबिलिटी फिक्स नहीं होगा, अगर लोग उनके अथॉरिटी को क्वेश्चन नहीं कर पाएंगे, तो उनके पास कोई इंसेंटिव नहीं रहेगा एक ऑनेस्ट political life spend करने का. That is the main problem. And in such a political culture and climate, desirable initiatives will not yield adequate dividends. And that is the reason that even if you bring RTI, fine, even if you bring CBI, even if you bring CBC, okay, even if you bring CVC, even if you bring CAG, fine, you will not be able to achieve a corrupt free society. That is the main point which is being conveyed by this particular paragraph, and this is the interlinkage. This is the example which you can quote. Despite having the body like CBI, why there is so much crime? Despite having CVC, why there is so much fraud or corruption in government departments? Despite having CAG, why there is fraud? Isn't it? So that is the problem. Even if we have institutions, the corrupt people, they find a quick fix, they find a loophole, and they exploit the law and they exploit the loopholes in these institutions. That is the problem. And again, I am asking a question. Tell me that right now we have this PM Cares Fund. Don't you think that this PM Cares Fund should be audited by CAG or it should come under RTI? This is my question. So I am asking you, all of you, I just want to know your opinion. What do you think? Do you think that this PM Cares should be coming under the ambit of both RTI and CAG? This is my question. Let me see what is your response. And let us move ahead in the time being. Competition and decentralization certainly reduce corruption in certain sectors. As we already discussed, we gave the example of both. This is 73rd, 74th CAA. Similarly, competition in terms of disinvestment of non-profit making PSUs, then strategic sale of assets. Then, but if the demand for corruption is fueled by inexhaustible appetite for illegitimate funds in politics, then other avenues of corruption will be forcibly opened up. Fine, that is the प्रॉब्लम. दैट इज अगर करप्शन, अगर पॉलिटिक्स में जो करप्शन है अगर वो काफ़ी अंदर तक पेनिट्रेट कर गया है, एंड देन दैट बिकम्स अ परपेचुअल विशियस साइकिल, then that will again open other avenues for corruption if one avenue is closed. So now let us look into how will that be done. And because of that, even as corruption declines in certain areas, it shifts to other, sometimes more dangerous areas in which competition cannot be introduced and the state exercises a natural monopoly. So when I told you this fact, that key, if corruption is such widely entrenched that it is very, very difficult to wipe it out, then even if you are able to plug one gap or plug one loophole in corruption, then that will manifest itself from other loopholes, or in other areas corruption will be taking place. For example, you see this particular statement, it says that कि होगा क्या कि ऐसे एरियाज मान लीजिए कि फॉर एग्जाम्पल लुक दिस इज 1, दिस इज 2, दिस इज 3, फॉर एग्जाम्पल दीज आर 3 होल्स, ओके 1, 2 एंड 3, ठीक है। अब इन 3 होल्स के थ्रू आपको पता है कि करप्शन और लीकेज होता है, तो आप क्या किए, यहाँ पे आपने कंपटीशन ला दिया, ठीक है, यहाँ पे आपने कंपटीशन ला दिया, फिर यहाँ पे आपने डिसेंट्रलाइजेशन ला दिया, ठीक है। But then you realize that this whole is something where you cannot bring in these competition or decentralization. Fine, why? Because this is hardcore area of government. That is, since this area doesn't leads to any profit. For example, providing food security. Okay, the state government or the state of India, the Indian government's role as a food security provider, that is to implement National Food Security Act, fine, of 2013. तो अगर मान लीजिए NFSA के 2013 एक्ट के तहत हमें पुअर पीपल को फूड देना है, अब उसमें भी देयर इज मल्टीपल पॉसिबिलिटीज टू इन्वॉल्व इन करप्शन, एंड सिंस दिस इज अ सोशल सर्विस रिलेटेड वर्क, बिकॉज इट विल नॉट ब्रिंग इन एनी प्रॉफिट्स, ऑब्वियसली कॉम्पिटिशन विल नॉट बी देयर बिकॉज प्राइवेट प्लेयर्स विल नॉट बी इंटरेस्टेड. That is why this will again be monopolized by state. Why? Because it is not private profit making, and then again state will induce in corruption. Since if you remember that Rajiv Gandhi had told that a lot of corruption takes place when an amount for food is delivered, and that corruption is in terms of PDS leakage or PDS based corruption, then FCI go down based corruptions. Fine. So such problem is there, and that is being told by this particular paragraph. Fine. Then what is needed with liberalization is corresponding political and governance reform to alter the incentives in politics and public office, and to promote integrity and ethical conduct. Fine. So if we bring a change in the fundamental structure itself in such a manner that there is no incentive left, for example the things which are taking place right now, that is seeding with Aadhaar, digitalizing the PDS shops, again in PDS shops bringing in multiple players. For example, again I am giving example of Chhattisgarh, that is Meri Marzi. Fine, Meri Marzi is the PDS scheme in Chhattisgarh, where there is multiple PDS shops and a customer or a consumer can choose from any of the PDS. So if these sort of structural reforms are brought, then this will definitely curb the incentives for the politicians and the public office to engage themselves in corrupt practices. That is the point. So now let me just erase this ink. Then all forms of corruption are reprehensible, and we need to promote a culture of zero tolerance for corruption. Very, very important. As an individual informed citizen, we should not tolerate corruption at any cost. Fine. Then if you remember, I had already discussed coercive corruption, isn't it? Where coercive corruption is that I as an individual, I do not want to involve in corruption, but I am being forced either by my colleague or by my seniors in order to involve in corruption, then that is termed as coercive corruption. And there can be multiple reasons in order to indulge oneself in coercive corruptions. There can be delays, isn't it? Like आप देखो कि अगर मुझे इनकम सर्टिफिकेट बनवाना है, और if you want a residential certificate, if you go by normal process, peon will say that भैया it will take 1 month. But if you say कि अरे भैया 500 लीजिए ना, या फिर अगर आपको जल्दी चाहिए, या फिर आप बोलते हो कि मुझे 7 days में चाहिए, आई नीड इट इन 1 week, तो वो क्या बोलता है पियोन या फिर तहसीलदार कि भाई ठीक है कुछ खर्चा पानी कर दीजिए, काम हो जाएगा, isn't it? So that is the example of delays. In order to avoid delays, we indulge in corruption. Then in order to avoid harassment, then lost opportunity, loss of precious time and wages, uncertainty, and at times potential danger of loss of life. So all these could result in individuals involving in coercive corruption. That is the main intent. Then the second form is this, that is collusive corruption. Fine. So in collusive corruption, both the parties, that is 1 and 2, ये दोनों parties equally involved रहते हैं, ठीक है, दोनों अपनी अपनी मर्जी से corruption में involve हो रहे हैं. That is the point in collusive corruption. Fine. There is no force element. So what is the various examples. The examples are awarding of contracts for public works and procurement of goods and services, recruitment of employees, evasion of taxes, substandard projects, collusive violation of regulations, adulteration of foods and drugs, obstruction of justice, and concealing or doctoring evidence in investigation are all examples of collusive corruption. Fine. Now, let us look into what international efforts have been in place till date in order to deal with corruption. Fine. So, since corruption is a global phenomena and has also become a serious global concern, so very important, you can please mark it in your notepad. That is UN Convention Against Corruption in 2003. Very important. Please mark it in your notepad. UN Convention Against Corruption. This was a framework that was agreed and adopted by the UN General Assembly in 2003, which provided against an international instrument against fighting corruption. This is the institutional level arrangement at international level. Similarly, ADB OECD Anti-Corruption Plan. Fine. So ADB OECD Anti-Corruption Plan. Tell me what is the full form of this ADB OECD. This is the second question, and after a few minutes I will be looking into comment section. So this has been signed by Government of India. It is a broad understanding to further the cause of inter-regional cooperation in the matter of prevention of corruption. Fine. So again, the World Bank has also declared war against corruption by refusing to fund projects whose implementation is tainted by corrupt practices. तो अगर यहाँ पे हमें initiative wise numbering करना है, तो this will be the first initiative, that is UN Convention Against Corruption. The second will be the anti-corruption plan of ADB OECD, which has been signed by India. The third will be the World Bank's declaration of war against corruption, and the fourth will be a joint statement. It was issued by IMF and World Bank agreeing on a framework for preventing and combating fraud and corruption in the activities and operations of their institutions. तो इस तरीके से these are the 4 examples from international domain or the steps which have been taken by the international governance in order to control and contain corruption. Fine. Then in India also there are multiple initiatives, and we will be discussing each of them in detail. That is ethical framework, legal framework, institutional framework, everything. So some recent anti-corruption initiatives are steps in the right direction, and the Supreme Court has ruled that the candidates contesting elections should file details regarding their wealth, educational qualifications, and criminal antecedents along with their nomination papers. So this is the overall like a single aspect of the steps taken in India, but other aspects also we will be dealing in our coming slides. So the other aspect is Right to Information Act, RTI. The first aspect is Supreme Court's guidelines regarding the directions to the candidates who is contesting an election. In RTI, which has been recently enacted, it has been thought of as a weapon to fight corruption, and this along with introduction of communication technologies, e-governance initiatives, and automation of corruption prone processes in administration have succeeded in reducing corruption. Now the another question from my part is, tell me some of the examples of e-governance initiatives by different state government or for that matter central government. So again, listen to the question. I want you to mention in the comment section some of the examples of e-governance initiatives by Government of India or Government of State in order to reduce corruption. Fine. So now much more remains to be done, however, and beyond the realm of existing regulation. Then the escalating levels of corruption in various segments of our economy, resulting in large-scale generation of black money, serious economic offences and fraud, and money laundering leading even to the funding of terrorist activities against the state, have created a grave situation which needs to be dealt with severely, isn't it? So this is the link. Now this is the link that corruption has with internal security and public order. Fine. Internal security and public order. These two aspects of our syllabus of GS3 and GS2, we can link it with GS4. Okay. GS2 and GS3 aspect can be linked to GS4. That is, it also has ramifications for internal security if corruption is done and black money is generated, and that black money is used to fund terrorist activities. And you might be knowing that we have a legal mechanism in order to fight black money. So can you tell me what is that mechanism? again I am asking you that there is some act. I'll give you a hint. In order to fight with black money, there is some act, black money, and in terms of channelizing the money through back channels or through shell companies to foreign entities or terrorist organizations, we have an act in place, and we also have an institution. So that institution is ED. I have given you the hint. You need to tell me the full form of ED, and regarding this ED there is some act also. Tell me the name of that act in the comment section. Fine. Now I will read some comments because it has been long time, so just give me 1 minute. Fine. A lot of people have given us answer, so we will be discussing it. Okay. Yes, so Ram's comment, transparent manner means that data controllers should present the information or communication efficiently and sufficiently in order to avoid information fatigue. Okay. Sayyad is again telling, Sayyad is telling transparency in appointments, but Sayyad, I am again asking, how will you do that? One answer has been given by Ram, that is partly correct, but I am asking that how will you bring that transparency in appointments? I will give the answer now finally. Then again Megha is telling that by making appointment bodies more independent. Yes, Megha has given that. Megha is in right direction. She has given one part of the answer, another part I will give. Sweta says that it should be scrutinized by CAG as well as CME under the ambit of RTI, so that we can know whether and how the money is being distributed. Very, very good answer, Sweta. That is the actual point. It should be coming within the ambit of both RTI and CAG. I think all of you will agree to it. And Navya has told to bring in more transparency, trust employees to make decisions, hire the right people. Okay. Ram's argument is that as this is a CARES fund in emergency situation, so CAG has to make audit if such funds are unused accordingly, and such info has to be publicized through RTI. So both Ram and Sweta agree that it should be under RTI and CAG. Sayyad says that as PM CARES fund is a voluntary donation by the public, it's not mandatory for CAG to audit. Okay, but Government of India should show activism itself without any demand from public. Yes, you are very, very correct, Sayyad, and this will improve the public faith. Navya says, just give me 1 minute, don't keep responsibilities and job functions a secret. Okay, correct. Sayyad says thus it will increase integrity, legitimacy of the Government of India. Yes, that's correct. Ram has given the answer, ADB, OECD, Asian Development Bank, Organization for Economic Development and Cooperation. Fine. Then Ram has given the example e-Seva in Andhra Pradesh. Okay, so I think Ram has given the answer of the e-governance initiative of his own state. So I would request other people watching, can you give me the example of e-governance initiatives of your own state? Sweta has given the answer DBT. Okay, Sweta, that's correct. Sudarshanan has given Asian Development Bank and OECD's answer. Ram says MCA 21 for ROC. Yes, and Ram, that is also a very good example. Dipsika says has given Asian Development Bank. Okay, then enforcement ED, the full form has been told as enforcement the trade by 5 times 7 is the username. Okay, no problem. Dipsika has also given the answer, and it is FEMA Act. Okay, FEMA Act is fine, but then there is also one thing that is called PMLA, Prevention of Money Laundering Act 2002. In case you all remember, okay, the act which I talked about is PMLA. Okay, Prevention of Money Laundering Act of 2002. Fine. So this is the link. Okay. Then Navya has given income declaration scheme. Yes, voluntary income declaration scheme. Fine. Now, yes, I wanted to tell you the answer. And since Megha had given the answer to a considerable extent, that is by making appointing bodies more independent. And how we can do that? कोई भी जो appointment है उसको आप एक panel के through करवाओ, isn't it? वो appointment entirely executive ना करे, ठीक है? उसमें क्या होना चाहिए कि there has to be a committee, isn't it? कहीं पे भी अगर अपॉइंटमेंट होना है किसी भी कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल बॉडी में या फिर गवर्नमेंट के बॉडीज और पोस्ट में, लेट देयर बी अ कमिटी. फाइन, लेट देयर बी अ कमिटी, एंड दिस कमिटी शुड हैव मल्टीपल members from different fields. There has to be some members from executive, some members from legislature, some members from public, that is academics or academicians or field experts, and another can be judiciary in certain cases. फाइन, तो कोई भी अपॉइंटमेंट है, चाहे वो मान लीजिए जजेस का अपॉइंटमेंट हो, चाहे वो लोकपाल का अपॉइंटमेंट हो, चाहे वो सीबीआई का अपॉइंटमेंट हो, चाहे वो सीईसी का अपॉइंटमेंट हो, ठीक है, किसी भी अपॉइंटमेंट में आप एक कमेटी को फॉर्म करो और उस कमेटी के में हर एक एस्पेक्ट्स के जितने भी इंस्टीट्यूशंस हैं हमारे पास, लेजिस्लेचर, एग्जीक्यूटिव, जुडिशियरी, पब्लिक एट लार्ज, ओके, इन सारे लोगों को आप उस कमेटी का मेंबर बनाओ ताकि all the appointments will be more transparent, more independent, as told by Megha and as told by Sayyad and all others. So this is the example, this is the how of to bring transparency. This is the step. Okay, I hope I have made myself clear. Now let us move ahead. Now, Benami properties of corrupt public servants need to be forfeited. That is Benami Properties Transactions Act, which is in place, isn't it? Then the assets illegally acquired from corrupt practices will need to be attached. Similarly, whistleblowers need to be protected. And if you remember, there was a Whistleblowers Protection Act in offing. Fine, that is witness protection scheme as well. Since there is one Whistleblower Protection Act which is in place. Similarly, when in the criminal justice system, when the witness gives his witness in order to ensure that for the victim justice is being served. Similarly, witness protection scheme is also in the offing. Fine, so these needs to be enacted. Then also we have to suitably, actually witness protection scheme has already been implemented, or it has been brought into picture. Then we have to suitably strengthen the institutional framework for investigating corrupt practices and awarding exemplary punishment to the corrupt, thereby raising the risk associated with corrupt behavior, isn't it? ये चीज को हमें इंश्योर करना होगा कि अगर मान लीजिए आई एम थिंकिंग to involve myself in some corrupt activity, but if I understand कि there is a high risk involved, that is I have a very good chance that I will be caught, then obviously I will think multiple times before involving myself in the corrupt practice or corrupt behavior. That is the point. Then ethics and governance, however, has a much wider import than what happens in the different arms of the government. Therefore, such an effort needs to include corporate ethics and ethics in business as well, isn't it? That is, corporate governance needs to be introduced. Then, in fact, there should be a paradigm shift from the pejorative of business ethics to ethics in business. That is, ethics should not, flow from business, but business should flow from ethics. That is the main point of this argument. I hope I have made myself clear. Then, there is need for ethics in every profession, voluntary organizations and civil society structure, as these entities are now vitally involved in the process of governance, isn't it? Now, since we are in the era of network governance, so let me give you one more extra topic or one more extra information from your exam point of view, that is called network governance. Okay, नेटवर्क गवर्नेंस का मतलब क्या होता है? इसका ये मतलब होता है कि ये जो गवर्नेंस का जो पिलर है, इसमें बस गवर्नमेंट इन्वॉल्व नहीं रहेगी, इसमें देयर विल बी गवर्नमेंट, देन देयर विल बी एनजीओस, ओके, देन देयर विल बी कॉर्पोरेट्स, ओके, देन देयर विल बी सिविल society organizations. Okay, so all these players apart from government will work together in order to realize the government goals. For example, Akshay Patra Foundation is working in order to realize the government's target of food security. Okay, so this is the example of network governance, and that is why, since in today's world, in today's India, network governance is in practice, therefore all these stakeholders, that is NGOs or CSOs or corporates, all these need to follow ethical behavior and ethical practices. I hope it is clear to all of you. Now, finally, there should be ethics in citizens' behavior, because such behavior impinges directly on ethics in government and administration. ठीक है, if as a citizen I am adamant enough to refuse any bribe, to refuse any corrupt activities, definitely the bureaucrat or the politicians or anyone for that matter will think twice before engaging himself or herself in corrupt practices. That is the main essence. As a citizen of our country, as a responsible citizen, we need to have first the ethical practice and the moral practice. Fine. So with this we have completed the introduction part, and I hope it was very, very useful. A lot of information was discussed. Now let us come to the second pointer, that is ethical framework. Fine, in this we will begin with ethics and politics. What ethics has to do with politics, and what are the arrangements, like what are the ethical norms for a minister, for a legislature, for a civil servant, for a public servant, etc. Okay, so any discussion on an ethical framework for governance in a democracy must necessarily begin with ethical values in politics. तो ये जो politics है, ये politics has to be at the helm of all the affairs when we discuss about ethical angle in politics or ethical angle in governance. Fine. So politics and those engaged in it play a vital role in the legislative and executive wings of the state, whose acts of commission and omission in working the constitution and the rule of law become the point of intervention for the judiciary, isn't it? जब एग्जीक्यूटिव कोई भी गलती करती है या फिर जब जब लेजिस्लेचर ऐसा कोई एक्ट लाता है जो कि विच इम्पिंजेस अपॉन द राइट्स ऑफ अ सिटीजन, देन सुप्रीम कोर्ट कम्स इनटू प्ले, isn't it? What is the example? One example I am giving you, another example I request you to tell me in the comment section. So one example is that section 66A of the IT Act was struck down by the constitution in Shreya Singhal case. ठीक है, सुप्रीम कोर्ट struck down section 66A of IT Act of 2000. ठीक है, ये मैंने एक एग्जांपल दिया है वेयर इफ लेजिस्लेचर और एग्जीक्यूटिव trespasses or transgresses its boundaries defined by the Constitution of India, then Supreme Court comes into play. This is one example, that is section 66 of IT Act being struck down by Supreme Court. I want you to give a different example in the comment section. It can be related to legislature as well as it can be related to executive also. Fine. Then excesses in elections, that is in campaign funding, use of illegitimate money, quantum of expenditure, imperfect electoral rolls, impersonation, booth capturing, violence, inducements and intimidation, floor crossing after elections to get into power, and abuse of power in public office became major afflictions of the political process over the years, isn't it? And that is why I had taken a class on electoral reforms and powers of election commission, then various provisions under section under 1951 RPA, then model code of conduct. And since I have discussed all these in my earlier videos, so I won't be giving much time to it. When you can go through these videos and you will get all the methods which have been put in place till now by ECI as well as judiciary in order to address these problems. Fine, let's move ahead. Now we have criminalization of politics. We have already discussed it, isn't it? That is participation of criminals in our political system. Then large illegal and illegitimate expenditure in elections is another root cause of corruption, and that is why the point of state funding of elections, isn't it? We discussed this also at length, that is the Dinesh Goswami Commission recommendations and as well as the Law Commission's recommendation plus second RC recommendations. Fine, all these bodies, they have talked about state funding of elections. Okay, then what are some of the recent improvements? Improvements in accuracy of electoral rolls. So these are basically the summary of all the recent steps which have been taken by various bodies in order to improve this particular electoral process. Fine, so before that let me look into comment section once more. Just give me 1 minute. Okay, Alka has joined us late. Okay, Alka, still no problem. Welcome to the class. And yes, you missed many important discussions, but you can watch the video later. Then Ram says that, sir, what if committee would be influenced by higher political officials? Then how can transparency guaranteed? Ram, actually that is very good question, but just imagine the beauty that एक कमेटी हम लोगों ने बनाया जिसमें कि अपोजिशन भी है और जिसमें कि रूलिंग पार्टी भी है, जिसमें जुडिशियरी भी है, जिसमें एकेडमिशियंस भी है. तो होता क्या है कि जब आप किसी भी ग्रुप में डाइवर्सिटी लाओगे तो हो सकता है कि आप एक मेंबर को इन्फ्लुएंस कर दो या दो को इन्फ्लुएंस कर दो, बट यू वोंट बी एबल टू इन्फ्लुएंस एवरी मेंबर. एंड सिंस इट विल बी अ ग्रुप, सो द डिसीजन विल बी टेकन ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ कंसेंसस. एंड ऑब्वियसली अगर 10 लोग की कमेटी है, 2 लोग इन्फ्लुएंस हो भी गए, दे वोंट बी एबल टू डू एनीथिंग. व्हाई? बिकॉज कंसेंसस इज रिक्वायर्ड, मेजॉरिटी वोट इज रिक्वायर्ड. So that is the beauty of getting a committee. Fine, might be that I am able to attract opposition, but will I be able to attract government? Or if I am able to attract a minister, will I be able to attract an ruling opposition party leader? No, isn't it? Because they will be poles apart. So that is the beauty. Okay, in that way it will be preserved. Okay, Alka says that please tell in short what you told in 1 hour. Alka, this is very cumbersome, and this is not possible because we discussed a lot of things in 1 hour, and in short it's not feasible to tell you, but still I'll tell you that we discussed about various definitions like ethics, then morals, then what are various forms of ethics, then how we need to bring ethical practice in normal life, and what have been the initiatives at the government level, at the international level, in order to realize ethics in our society. So this is in brief. The rest you can go through the video. Then okay, Sweta has given the another answer, that is NJAC has been struck down by judiciary. Okay, that has been given by the Sweta, the answer. But actually Sweta, this is itself a very controversial point, because actually that should not have been, you know, struck down, because whenever you will get a question in your mains to write about the, you know, unbridled powers of judiciary, then we will quote this as an example, that judiciary should not have struck down NJAC, because NJAC was a progressive reform. Second ARC itself had talked about bringing in NJAC in order to, you know, in place of collegium system for appointing judges. Fine. Then Ram says that, sir, but in okay, but in pragmatic situation it can't be possible. I think so. No, Ram, it is possible, and you know, you can better search like NHRC. Fine. The bodies like NHRC, in that a committee system is there. Fine, in which there are members from both political parties as well as opposition, and similarly there are multiple other posts in which even you Lokpal, fine, even in the Lokpal and Lokayuktas, the Lokpal is being, you know, appointed with the help of a committee. Similarly NHRC head is being appointed by a committee. So it is possible, and it should be brought in every aspect. Okay, so now let us move ahead. So these reforms, I think most of you might be aware, so I will just do a cursory reading. In case you find a problem anywhere, you can ask me, or if I will feel that some point needs an elaborate explanation, I will do the same. So printed electoral rolls or CDs have been made available for sale. Then computerization of entire electoral rolls of over 620 million voters has been initiated. Then photo identity cards for all voters has been started. So again, a question for you, can you tell me who was the chief election commissioner who had given this idea of photo ID cards? And if you remember, in my earlier class I had discussed about this particular personality. He has, you know, he has passed away recently, and he is a very, very important figure in Indian bureaucracy. So tell me in the comment section whose idea was there in order to introduce photo ID cards. Tell me in the comment section. Then the second is that disclosure of antecedents of candidates. So in this, Supreme Court had directed that a candidate should declare against conviction by a court or whether a criminal case is pending against him. Similarly, when he files a declaration of assets and liabilities of the candidate and family members, it would help in checking at the time of next elections. Fine. Then disqualification of persons convicted of criminal offence. In this, Supreme Court had ruled in 2005 that Section 8, Clause 4 of RPA was unconstitutional as it violated equality before law. Similarly, we can link it with the Lily Thomas case of 2013, the Supreme Court judgment. Fine. So this I have mentioned. Along with this, you can write this also, because at that time this report was given by second ARC in 2007 or 6, but Lily Thomas case was, you know, judgment was given in 2013 by Supreme Court. So this Lily Thomas case judgment is also in the same direction. Fine. That is, if you are, you know, convicted, then you will immediately be disqualified, and I had discussed this also in my earlier class. So Venu Gopal is very quick to comment TN Shesan. Yes, Venu, you are very, very correct. Ram has also given the answer as TN Shesan. So let me check what other people have to say. Then the third is enforcement of the code of conduct, and in this we had read about MCC in depth, isn't it? We had discussed MCC very elaborately in my earlier courses. Fine. So using its overall powers to superintend, control and direct elections under Article 324 of the Constitution, the Election Commission has made the Code of Conduct for Elections binding on all respects, issuing directions regarding timings of campaigns, prohibition of festoons or cutouts, insistence on daily expenditure statements, appointments of a large number of observers, ordering of repoll in specific polling booths and other such steps. That is broadly the MCC reforms. Fine. Broadly the reforms related to Model Code of Conduct. So another hint for you is that you can see that how different topics are interlinked, isn't it? आज हम लोग जो डिस्कस कर रहे हैं इसमें बहुत सारी चीज़ों के बारे में elaborate वे में हम लोगों ने पहले भी डिस्कस किया है. तो this shows that paper 1, paper 2, paper 3, paper 4, all of them are interlinked and interdependent. Fine. Then the fourth is free and fearless polling. Okay. So this has been brought by bringing in central forces and holding of elections for more than one day in a state, and measures like sealing of borders. Fine. Then the introduction of EVM, and this was started in parliamentary elections in 2004. And second, it has been decided that the death of an independent candidate would not lead to the cancellation of an election. So these are some of the reforms. Another reform is that reduction in the size of Council of Ministers. So it has been restricted that only the 10% of the total elected legislatures, fine, only 10% will be made ministers, fine. And this was first mooted by the ARC, that is first ARC more than 3 decades ago. आप इमेजिन कर सकते हो 30 साल पहले फर्स्ट ARC ने इस चीज को रिकमेंड किया था और इसे इंप्लीमेंट करने में गवर्नमेंट को 30 साल लगा. ओनली व्हेन इन 2003 the 91st Amendment Act brought this particular thing, that is 15%. Okay, recommendation by the first ARC 30 years before was 10%, but after 30 years that to 15% of the strength of the total elected legislatures was to be constituted as Council of Ministers in lower house of the parliament or state legislature, fine. Then the amendment is a step towards moderating the number of ministers to some extent. Okay, now let us look into what are some of the issues in political reforms. So reform of political funding we already discussed in our earlier courses in very depth. So here we will be just giving it a passing reference, fine. So India is one of the source of political parties funding through private donations, isn't it? And we had discussed about this. But internationally there are 3 broad patterns. Let us look into what are the international practices when funding in elections is concerned, fine. So the first is minimalist pattern. So now if you have a notepad, you can please make a note of this, that 3 different funding patterns at international level. The first is minimalist pattern, where the elections are partially subsidized, usually through specific grants or state rendered services, and where it is practiced in UK, Ireland, Australia, New Zealand and Canada. While the US is a variant of the same, with election funding being largely private and subjected to strict reporting and disclosure requirement as well as limits on contributions. So in India, though we are in this part, that is private funded, but we don't have this culture, that is the culture of strict reporting and disclosure requirements as well as limiting contributions. So apart from this, if we are able to bring these reforms as well, then a problem will be solved, and this can be corroborated with the help of state funding of elections. So after Venu Gopal and Ram Kishore, Navya has given the answer as TN Shesan, Alka has given the answer as TN, Sudarshanan has told TN Shesan. Yes, all of you are correct. And regarding that TN Shesan, regarding sir, we had also discussed in our earlier class. Then second is maximalist pattern of state funding involves public funding not merely for elections but even for other party activities as in Sweden and Germany. तो हम लोगों ने यहाँ पे 2 पैटर्न पढ़ा. एक पैटर्न है मिनिमलिस्ट, जहाँ पे कि बस इलेक्शंस के केस में देयर विल बी स्टेट फंडिंग. दूसरा पैटर्न है मैक्सिमलिस्ट, जहाँ पे कि नॉट ओनली इन टर्म्स ऑफ इलेक्शंस बट ऑल्सो इन पार्टी एक्टिविटीज state funding is done, and the example is Sweden and Germany, fine. Then this pattern involves less detailed regulation of contributions and expenditure because parties are dependent largely on state support and local requirements to enforce internal democracy as well as general transparency. And in between these 2 approach, that is, one is the maximalist pattern and another is the minimalist pattern, fine. So in between there is a third type of arrangement, that is a mix of these 2 patterns, which involves partial reimbursement for public funding of elections on a matching grant basis, such as in France, Netherlands and South Korea. So these are some of the international practices which second ARC has drawn upon before giving recommendations regarding state funding of elections, fine. So second ARC further observes that while the RPA put limits on elections expenditure, company donations to political parties were banned in 1969 but later allowed by an amendment of the Companies Act in 1985. This is the point. Although at one point of time, the company donations by the private firms, it was banned, but later on it was again resumed. Then the Dinesh Goswami Committee on Electoral Reforms, set up in 1990, recommended limited support, that is a form of third pattern, that is a middle path between the minimalist pattern and the maximalist pattern. That has to be in kind or in vehicle fuels, higher charges of microphones, copies of electoral rolls, etc., while simultaneously recommending a ban on company donations. So very, very important. Fine. That is the Dinesh Goswami committee has recommended on a ban on company donations. Fine. Then there was another committee, that is Indrajit Gupta committee. So please remember these committee names. These committee names are very, very important from your both prelims and your mains viewpoint. Fine. The Dinesh Goswami committee on electoral reforms, then the Indrajit Gupta committee on state funding of elections. It had also recommended partial state funding, mainly in kind. Fine. So these are the committees. Then again NCRWC, that is National Committee to Review the Working of the Constitution. It said that until better regulatory mechanisms are arranged at, state funding of elections should be deferred. This was the opinion of NCRWC. Now let us look into what this second ARC has to recommend. Second ARC says that a system for partial state funding. Fine. Even the second ARC tells that full state funding should not be allowed. A partial state funding mechanism can be achieved at. Fine. And this is necessary so that it can help us to reduce the scope of illegitimate and unnecessary funding of expenditure for elections. Fine. This was the second ARC's recommendations. Now what about anti-defection law? Fine. So the 91st CAA was enacted in 2003 to tighten the anti-defections provisions of the 10th schedule enacted earlier in 1985. Very, very important from your prelims angle. Fine. That is, please remember that 10th schedule, that is anti-defection law, was first enacted in 1985. Further amendment was done to it, that is 91st Constitutional Amendment Act in 2003. Fine. So in that case, second ARC recommends that the issue of disqualification of members on grounds of defection should be decided by the president or governor on the advice of the election commission. So now I want to ask you a question. Tell me what is the current process. ठीक है, ये जो process है, this process has been recommended by second ARC, which is very, very important. You need to write similar answer in your mains. That is either the president or the governor taking into confidence the election commissioner or the election commission should decide on the anti-defection matter. This is the recommendation by second ARC. My question is that what is the current scenario in place? Tell me in the comment section. Fine. Now what is the recommendation regarding disqualification? So regarding disqualification, second ARC recommends that section 8 of the RPA needs to be amended to disqualify all persons facing charges related to grave and heinous offences and corruption with the modifications suggested by the election commission. Fine. This is the second ARC's recommendation on disqualification. Then comes the false declarations. So on this, the election commission has recommended that all false declarations before the returning officer, okay, they should be made an electoral offence under section 31 of the RPA. Fine. Under section 31 of the RPA, let all the false declarations by the political parties or politicians be made an electoral offence. Fine. Then the fifth is publication of accounts by political parties. Political parties have a responsibility to maintain proper accounts of their income and expenditure and get them audited, isn't it? That is, there is also a debate that whether political parties should come under the ambit of RTI and whether their accounts should be audited by CAG. Fine. That is also a matter of concern. Then the sixth dimension is coalition and ethics. What ethical behavior has to be adhered to in case of coalition politics? In this case, second ARC recommends that the constitution should be amended to ensure that if one or more parties in a coalition with a common program mandated by the electorate, either explicitly before the elections or implicitly while forming the government, realign midstream with one or more parties outside the coalition, then members of that party or parties shall have to seek a fresh mandate from the electorate. ठीक है, तो इसका मतलब यह है कि मान लीजिए कोई दो पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज, फॉर एग्जांपल आरजेडी एंड कांग्रेस, फाइन, इफ दीज पार्टीज formed a pre-poll alliance and in that they enacted some common minimum program. But imagine when they won the seats, then after winning seats, they went into some sort of realignment. Fine. In that case, they should be, they should be seeking a fresh mandate. Why? Because then, the true will of the people will not be reflected. Also, they will not be adhering to their common minimum program, and that is why they should seek a fresh mandate, and this should be a ethical behavior. Right? Then appointment of the election commissioners and the chief election commissioners. In this, second ARC recommends. So okay, one of you had asked me a question. I'm just, yes, Ram. So Ram, you can refer to this also, fine, which I told you regarding what will be the beauty if a committee decides or a collegium decides. Okay, so you see, even in case of CEC, that is Chief Election Commissioner, second ARC has recommended that let there be a collegium, fine, which has to be headed by PM with Speaker of the Lok Sabha, the leader of opposition. You see this, focus on this, that is leader of opposition, then the law minister, then deputy chairman of Rajya Sabha. All these should make recommendations for the consideration of the president for the post of both CEC and election commissioners. So now let me check some comments. I had asked a question. Okay, so speaker decides on anti-defection. Yes, Sweta, you are correct. Right now, speaker decides on anti-defection. Then Alka says that speaker decides, whole soul power to him, chairman in case of Rajya Sabha. Yes, Alka, you are correct. Deepsika says that, sir, in RPA there are many offences mentioned, punishment for these offences are also mentioned, but who delivers or imposes those punishments? Actually, whatever is given in RPA, those powers are exercised in general by election commission, fine, and in some cases election commission can further file a charge sheet and it can be taken in the Supreme Court, fine, Deepsika. Okay, so now the eighth dimension is expediting disposal of election petitions. In this case, second ARC has to recommend that a special election tribunals should be constituted at the regional level under Article 323B of the Constitution. Tell me, what does 323A stands for? Okay, tell me, this is the question. Tell me in the comment section, what does Article 323A deals with? Okay, this is your question. Tell me in the comment section. Fine. So second ARC says that under Article 323B of the Constitution, okay, appropriate election tribunals should be formed in order to ensure the speedy disposal of election petitions, fine. Then it further elaborates regarding the structure of the tribunal. It says that each tribunal should comprise a high court, judge and a senior civil servant with at least 5 years of experience in the conduct of elections, and he should be not below the rank of additional secretary to the government of India or principal secretary to the government of state, fine. Then its mandate should be to ensure that all election petitions are decided within a period of 6 months, fine. This time limit is important so that speedy disposal of cases can take place. Then the tribunals should normally be set up for a term of 1 year only, extendable for a period of 6 months in exceptional circumstances. So Venugopal is the first to answer. He has told about CAT, that is Central Administrative Tribunals. So yes, Venu, you are right. 323A deals with administrative tribunals and 323B deals with tribunals for all other matters. Okay, so let us move ahead. Now the ninth dimension is that grounds for disqualification for membership. So in this case, Article 102 of the Constitution provides for disqualification for membership of either House of Parliament under certain specific circumstances. So what second ARC has to recommend, let us look into that. So Deepsika has told, Ramkishore has also given the correct answer, then Sweta has also given the correct answer, Navya has given the correct answer, all of you are correct, and even Chirag has given the answer. Chirag, you need to be more specific, okay? You will have to say that it has to deal with administrative tribunals and not only tribunals, fine. The word administrative is the key word regarding Article 323A, okay. Then the second ARC has to recommend that appropriate legislation may be enacted under Article 102 Clause E of the Constitution, spelling out the conditions for disqualification of membership of Parliament in an exhaustive manner. Similarly, for states, it has to be Article 198E, fine. Whatever are the conditions, okay, which will make a person, a member, disqualified, that has to be elaborately explained in the clause itself so that no ambiguity and no confusion is there, fine. Similarly, what about ethics in public life? So we dealt with first component, that was ethics in politics. Now let us deal with what about ethics in public life. So ethics is grounded in the notion of responsibility and accountability. So there has to be the quality of both responsibility as well as accountability. If these two qualities are there, we can assume that a particular person will be ethical. Fine. And the fundamental principle in a democracy is that all persons holding authority derive it from the people, isn't it? We very proudly say, we the people of India, isn't it? Having solemnly resolved ourselves to constitute India into a sovereign, secular, socialist, democratic republic. So we the people of India, isn't it? तो कोई भी अथॉरिटी हो, चाहे वो एक पॉलिटिशियन हो, चाहे वो जज हो, सारे लोग एक डेमोक्रेसी में पावर जो डिराइव करते हैं वो लोग से, हमसे, वी द पीपल. डेमोक्रेसी इज बाय द पीपल, for the people, of the people, isn't it? That is by the people, for the people, of the people, isn't it? So ultimately people are at the center of a democracy. In other words, all public functionaries are trustees of the people. Very, very important. This particular point is very, very important from your understanding perspective. ठीक है? Therefore, the role of ethics in public life has many dimensions. At the one end, high moral values, and at the other end there has to be specifics of actions for which a public functionary can be held legally accountable. Therefore, if we bring in any framework for ethical behavior, it must include these following components. So what are these components? The first is codifying ethical norms and practices. This is the first component. The second is disclosing personal interest to avoid conflict between public interest and personal gain, isn't it? अगर कोई भी ऐसा सिचुएशन आता है जहाँ पे कि देयर कैन बी अ सर्कमस्टेंस वेयर अ कॉन्फ्लिक्ट ऑफ इंटरेस्ट माइट टेक प्लेस, देन दैट हैज टू बी enumerated beforehand so that a clash between personal interest and public interest can be avoided. Fine. And that is why there are recommendations given by second ARC for the conduct of a civil servant, for the conduct of a minister, for the conduct of a legislature. Fine. Then there has to be a mechanism for enforcing the relevant codes. Finally, there has to be norm for disqualifying and qualifying of public functionary from office. Fine. Then one of the most comprehensive statements of what constitutes ethical standards for holders of public office came from the Committee on Standards in Public Life in UK. It was known as Nolan Committee. Very, very important. Fine. Even in your book, ethics book, you will find this committee's name. That is why I am boxing it so that you people can please make a note of it in your notepad. Fine. That is Nolan Committee on Standards in Public Life was constituted by the UK government, and it basically gave 7 principles of public life. Fine. 7 principles of public life. The first was selflessness. Second was integrity. Now selflessness means that whatever decisions a public office holder takes, that should be in the interest of public. Fine. And not in order to serve the interest of his family or his friends and himself. This is the meaning of selflessness. Then when we talk of integrity, it means that holders of public office should not place themselves under any financial or other obligations to outside individuals or organizations that might influence them in performance of their official duties. Fine. Because if we are under obligation of someone, isn't it, then our work will be in such a manner that it serves the purpose of that particular person, and we will not be able to discharge our duty without any favor or fear or ill will. That is the reason that we should not have obligations of any other person. Fine. Then the third criteria is objectivity. Fine. अगर कोई भी क्राइटेरिया को हम लोग इनलिस्ट कर रहे हैं, that should be very, very objective, which means that the terms and conditions for any person should be same. It should not be that if I have a dear friend, for him the criteria is something else, and if you are there, for you the criteria will be something else. No, this should not take place. Fine. And specifically, like in cases like awarding contracts or appointments or rewards and benefits, there should be objectivity, means same type of treatment to all the individuals and no whims and fancies. Fine. Then the fourth will be accountability, that is holding the authority responsible for their act of commissions and omissions. That is the meaning of accountability. Fifth will be openness. Openness means holders of public office should be as open as possible about all the decisions and actions they take. Fine, and they should give reasons for their decisions and restrict information only when the wider public interest clearly demands, and that is why RTI is one of the important tool. इससे पहले कि कोई सिटीजन RTI के थ्रू कोई इंफॉर्मेशन आपसे डिमांड करे, एज एज अ विजिलेंट एंड एज एन अवेयर सिविल सर्वेंट, आप उससे पहले ही उस इंफॉर्मेशन को पब्लिक डोमेन में डिस्क्लोज कर दो. दैट इज द मीनिंग ऑफ द वर्ड ओपननेस. देन द सिक्स्थ इज लीडरशिप. In case of leadership, holders of public office should promote and support these principles by leadership and by example. Fine. And the seventh and the last criteria is honesty. Fine. That is, they have a duty to declare any private interests relating to their public duties and to take steps to resolve any conflicts arising in a way that protects the public interest. That is, they should be very, very honest and committed to their duty. And although all citizens are subject to the laws of the land, in the case of public servants, there must be standards of behavior more stringent than those for an ordinary citizen. The question to you all is why? Why do you think so? Fine, this is the question. Please tell me. I am telling you that, the second ARC says that though all the citizens are subject to the laws of the land, but when it comes to a bureaucrat, a public servant, then in his or her case, the standards of behaviors needs to be more stringent as compared to an ordinary citizen. My question is, why do you think so? What can be the reason? Please tell me in the comment section. In the meanwhile, I'll read some comments. So Sai Kiran is asking me ethics book, sir. Sai, apart from my video, you can refer to Chronicle book of ethics. Okay, and after that, around 50% of the syllabus of ethics will be covered in today's class and tomorrow's class of our this marathon class, and whatever theory part is remaining, that you can cover from Chronicle, and your GS4 will be broadly completed. Fine. Then Alka says that administrative tribunals consisting of CAT and SAT. Okay, Alka, that's correct. Then Deepsika says preamble of the Constitution. Yes, we the people of India is the word from the preamble of the Constitution. Then Deepsika has also told that selfless, integrity, objectivity, accountability, openness, honesty, and leadership. Yes. So actually Deepsika has summed up all these seven, the factors which has been pointed out by the Nolan committee. Thank you, Deepsika. Ram says, whenever we are perfect, then only we can suggest others to do so. I mean, we should be like a role model. Yes, Ram, that is a very good interpretation, and that is the reason why the civil servants or the public servants, they have a greater responsibility. Why? Because they are the role models for the society. अगर एक कलेक्टर ही dishonest होंगे, तो वहाँ के जो लोग हैं, they will also be dishonest, isn't it? Because that collector will set an example. That is why, as a public servant, there has to be more stringent norms and laws for us. Fine. Then Sweta has also given the answer. She says that they represent society as a whole and should be made as precedent. Yes, Sweta, correct. Alka says pro crony must be changed to pro business approach as told in economic survey. Yes, Alka, that is also very, very correct answer. Chirag says because of his actions influence many people. Yes, Chirag, you are correct. All of you are correct, and this is the very apt interpretation of all of you guys. Congratulations. Then it is at the interface of public action and private interest that the need arises for establishing not just a code of ethics but a code of conduct. So why I have put it in bold is very, very important. I want you to make a note of it. Why? Because code of ethics and code of conduct, both are two different things. While for a civil servant, there has to be both code of conduct and code of ethics. Fine, there is a code of conduct, but there are no code of ethics. That is the problem. Fine. Now let us look into it. A code of ethics which would cover broad guiding principles of good behavior and governance, while a more specific code of conduct should, in a precise and unambiguous manner, stipulate a list of acceptable and unacceptable behavior and action. Fine. So in a sense, both code of conduct and code of ethics has to be in place for both ministers as well as civil servants as well as legislators. Fine. So now let us come into the other aspect, that is what has to be ethical framework for ministers. Fine. So in case of ministers, the government of India, it has prescribed a code of conduct which is applicable to ministers of both union and state governments. So now what are those code of conducts? Let us look into them very, very briefly. Fine. So In addition to the observance of the provisions of Constitution, the RPA 1951 and any other law for the time being in force, a person before taking office as minister, what he shall do and what he shall not do. So now whatever things we will be studying from here, these will require lesser analysis and more of learning, and that is why I will be trying to just have a cursory approach for them, and we will try to make it fast. Fine. So he will have to disclose to the PM or the CM, as the case may be, about all his assets and liabilities and business interests of either himself or members of his family. Then the details to be disclosed shall consist of particulars of all immovable property and total approximate values of shares and debentures, cash holdings and jewelry. Fine, these are the things. Then second is that he or she will have to sever all connections short of divesting himself of the ownership with the conduct and management of any business in which he was interested before his appointment as minister, so that no conflict of interest like situation arises. Fine. Then with regard to a business concern which supplies goods or services to the government concerned or to undertakings of that government, okay, except in the usual course of trade or business and at standard or market rates, okay, or whose business primarily depends on licenses, permits, quotas or leases, etc., received or to be received from the government concerned, divest himself of all his interest in the said business and also of the management thereof. Appointment as minister associated with the conduct or management or ownership of the said business. Very long sentence, not everything is important. The only essence of this particular sentence is that if the minister is directly or indirectly involved in any of the affairs or business which will benefit him or his near and dear ones, such activities needs to be prohibited by the minister. That is the point. Fine. Then, but there are two exceptions. Okay. The exceptions are that he may transfer the case of his interest in the management and in the case of both ownership and management to any adult member of his family or adult relative other than his wife, who was prior to his appointment as minister associated with the conduct or management or ownership of the said business. Fine. Like if before being appointed as a minister, if I was director of a company, then once I become minister, I will immediately have to resign from that post, and that post can be taken by my wife. That is not a problem. Fine. Then the question of divesting himself of his interests would not arise in case of holding of share in public limited companies. So this is an exception. That is why just this point has to be kept in mind, because this is an exception. Fine. Except where the PM or the CM, as the case may be, considers that the nature or extent of his holding is such that it is likely to embarrass him in the discharge of his official duties. So only in that case he can retain. Fine. Then what about the second point? The second point is that after taking office and so long as he remains in office, the minister shall furnish annually by the 31st March to the PM or the chief minister, as the case may be, a declaration regarding his assets and liabilities. Okay, all the declarations regarding his assets and liabilities have to be furnished by the minister. Then he must refrain from buying from or selling to the government any immovable property, except where such property is compulsorily acquired by the government in usual course, and he should refrain from starting or joining any business. So these are plain reading. That is why nothing much to explain. We just need to have a look and remember them. Fine. That is why I am not discussing or explaining them in detail, because it is not required. Then he has to ensure that the members of his family do not start or participate in business concerns engaged in supplying goods or services to that government or department primarily on grant of license, permits, quotas, leases, etc. from that government. And the fifth part is that report the matter to the PM or CM, as the case may be, if any member of his family sets up or joins in the conduct and management of any other business. Fine. यहाँ पे क्या है, ये चीज़ इसलिए बोला जा रहा है सो दैट ऐसा ना हो कि मान लीजिए अगर मैं एज अ मिनिस्टर मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ हेल्थ एंड फैमिली वेलफेयर में हूँ और मेरे कोई रिलेटिव कोई मान लीजिए प्रोडक्ट बना रहे हैं हेल्थ का, तो क्या हो सकता है कि देयर इज हाई प्रोबेबिलिटी दैट आई विल फेवर हिम इन प्रोक्योरमेंट. दैट इज द रीजन दैट दिस पर्टिकुलर पॉइंट हैज बीन इंक्लूडेड. फाइन. देन द थर्ड इज no minister should personally or through a member of his family accept contribution or for any purpose, whether political, charitable or otherwise, or associate himself with the raising of funds except for the benefit of a registered society or a charitable body or an institution recognized by public authority and political party. Fine. So since this is the exception, so you need to remember this thing. Then the fourth is what a minister should do. A minister should not accept valuable gifts except from close relatives, and he or members of his family should not accept any gifts at all from any person with whom he may have official dealings. तो ऐसे कोई भी लोग जिनके साथ मिनिस्टर का ऑफिशियल डीलिंग है उससे किसी भी तरीके का गिफ्ट नहीं लेना है, ठीक है. नॉर ही कैन परमिट अ मेंबर ऑफ हिज फैमिली कॉन्ट्रैक्ट डेब्ट्स ऑफ अ नेचर लाइकली टू एम्बैरेस और इन्फ्लुएंस हिम इन द डिस्चार्ज ऑफ हिज ऑफिशियल ड्यूटीज. तो ऐसे कोई भी एक्टिविटीज विच हिंडर्स हिज डिस्चार्ज ऑफ हिज ऑफिशियल ड्यूटीज, दोज एक्टिविटीज शुड नॉट बी टेकन अप बाय मिनिस्टर. दैट इज द पॉइंट, ठीक है. देन बट दिस इज अ रिलैक्सेशन and that is why this is star marked. This you can make a note of it, that there are two categories under which he can be exempted from taking gifts, that is when he goes abroad or from foreign dignitaries in India. The first category will include gifts which are of symbolic nature, and other will be the gifts which are less than rupees 5,000 in value. Fine. Then whatever instructions are given by a PM to a minister, that instructions have to be followed by the minister time to time whenever he goes to any foreign trip or whenever he is associated with any institutions or organizations other than UNO, of which India is a member. Why? Because when he will join UNO, then he will have to make his conduct as per the principles enshrined in the UNO. And the fifth point is that a minister should, while on official tour, as far as practicable, stay in accommodation belonging to himself or maintained by government and government undertakings or public bodies or institutions, and he should avoid attending as far as possible ostentatious or lavish parties given in his honor, isn't it? Because अगर इन parties को वो attend करेगा तो indirectly वो trap में फंस रहा है, isn't it? And he will be putting himself in an obligation to a corporate or to the organizer of that party. That is the reason he should avoid it. Fine. Then the commission has examined the code of conduct in other countries and is of the view that a code of ethics and a code of conduct for ministers should include the following. So the first is, please uphold the highest ethical standards. This is the first thing which has to be kept in mind for the ministers. Then there has to be a sense of collective responsibility, that is the members should swim and sink together, isn't it? Even in Lakshmikant, even in our constitution, this principle of collective responsibility which tells for swimming and sinking together has been mentioned. Fine. So we will be winding up the class in next 15 minutes. Fine, not more than that. We will be winding up the class in next 15 minutes. I am just planning to cover this ethical conducts for a minister part. Once we are done with that, we will be winding up our today's class. Okay. Then third point is that ministers have a duty to parliament to account and to be held to account for the policies, decisions and actions for their departments and agencies. Fine. The fourth point is that ministers must ensure that no conflict arises or appears to arise between their public duties and their private interests. So this we have already discussed. Then ministers in the Lok Sabha must keep separate their roles as minister and a constituency member. Both these roles should not be mixed up. This has to be kept separate. Fine. Then they must not use government resources for party or political purposes. They must accept responsibility for decisions taken by them and not merely blame it on wrong advice. Very, very important. Fine. Then G part says that ministers must uphold the political impartiality of the civil service. Very, very important. Please, you as a minister should not influence undue pressure on a civil servant, because that will harm his independent working. Fine. Then next point says that ministers must comply with the requirements which the two houses of parliament lay down from time to time. Another point is that ministers must recognize that misuse of official positions or information is violation of the trust reposed in them as a public functionary, isn't it? अगर मान लीजिए if there is some cabinet papers which is secret, and if a minister releases that secret to some private party or some company for undue advantage, then that is actually a breach of trust. Fine. Then ministers must ensure that public monies are used with utmost economy and care, and that is why we have CAG for audit, and that is why we talk about efficiency and economy in terms of public expenditure. Fine. Then the another point is that ministers must function in such a manner as to serve as instruments of good governance and to provide services for the betterment of the public at large and foster socio-economic development. And the last point is that ministers must act objectively, impartially, honestly, equitably, diligently, and in a fair and just manner. So most of these are overlapping with the criteria or the factors which were put up by the Nolan committee. Fine. So this is the first. This is the slide, and this is the slide. These two slides are the last which we will be discussing, and we will wind up our today's class. So I request you to please bear with me for the next 10 minutes at the max, not more than 10 minutes. Okay. So now let us look into what are the second ARC's recommendations regarding ethical conduct of a minister. Fine. So second ARC says that in addition to the existing code of conduct for ministers, there should be a code of ethics. So very important. I will repeat this point because this is important, which means that there is already a code of conduct for ministers, but second ARC feels that that is not sufficient. Along with code of conduct, we also need a code of ethics, which will provide that how the ministers should uphold the highest standards of constitutional and ethical conduct in performance of their duties. Fine. Then the second point is that dedicated units should be set up in the offices of the PM or CM to monitor the observance of the code of ethics and the code of conduct, and the unit should also be empowered to receive public complaints regarding violation of the code of conduct. Fine. And then the third recommendation by the second ARC is that the PM or the CM should be duty bound to ensure the observance of the code of ethics and the code of conduct by ministers, and this would be applicable even in the case of coalition governments where the ministers may belong to different parties. So even if the ministers belong to different parties, but they should be abiding by the code which has been set up by the PM and their respective CM. And the fourth point is that the annual report with regard to the observance of these codes should be submitted to the appropriate legislature. Then this report should include specific cases of violations, if any, and action taken thereon. Okay, a proper strict observation of the activities of all the ministers should be in place, and action should be taken if they are of a deviant behavior. Then the fifth recommendation is that the code of ethics should inter alia include broad principles of the minister civil servant relationship. Very important, so that there is a clear cut defined way in which a minister should conduct himself when he interacts with a civil servant, and the code of conduct should stipulate the details. And finally, the final recommendation is that the code of ethics, the code of conduct, and the annual report, they should be put in the public domain. Fine. So this single thing is very important, that is all the three things, the code of ethics, the code of conduct, and the annual report. Let them be put in the public domain so that the people at large can analyze everything. Why? Because we are the people of India. In democracy, we are the ultimate power bearer, and we are the ones who have constituted the government. Therefore ultimate, we are the guardians, we are the analyzer. That is why it should be put in the public domain. Fine. So with this we have completed the ethical framework for ministers, and from tomorrow class we will be starting from here, that is ethical framework for legislators. This we will start from tomorrow's class, and today we will wind up our class here only. And before that I will read some comments. Okay, so Ram has given the last comment. He says that the opposite of code of conduct of MPs and even MLAs is exactly happening now. Yes, Ram, that is a very unfortunate happening, and that is the current scenario in our political system. That is, whatever code of conduct says, exactly opposite our ministers are doing. Fine. So that is the problem. So with this we wind up today's class. I hope it was very useful and informative for all of you. And again I am telling you, this particular report is lengthy and lot of stuffs are important, and that is why the classes are a bit long. Might be that tomorrow the class will stretch for 2.5 hours or more than that, that is maximum 2 hours 45 minutes. So please mentally prepare yourself before joining the class tomorrow. Fine. And tomorrow we will definitely complete this particular second ARC report. And the people who are new, you can join this Telegram channel, that is Road to Civils. And because the timing of tomorrow's class I will announce in the group, in this Telegram channel I will announce the timing of tomorrow's class. Fine. So please regular check this Telegram channel. Okay, I will upload the timing for tomorrow's class, and you can follow me on this Unacademy profile. And finally, if you liked this particular video, you can please share it with all your friends, and you can like the video, and hope you all to again catch tomorrow. Till then, goodbye. Thank you. Stay safe and take care. Thank you everyone.